Chapter 1. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Su Qianxi hurried to the Li family's house. "I want to see him." "Sorry," the young master said. "Su Qianxi and the dog are not allowed in." With a bang in her heart, she felt as if something was breaking. She yelled, "Li Xiqing, come out. Let's talk. I have nothing to do with Grandpa's death. I was knocked out. When I woke up, Grandpa was already dead." The security guard stared at the scar on her face coldly without saying a word. "Forget it," said a soft voice. A woman who looked to be in her late 20s was standing behind the gate. "He will not see you. Grandpa just passed away and he needs peace." It was her, Li Xiqing's acknowledged lover and once her best friend, Tang Menjing. As Li Xiqing's female companion for 5 years, in the eyes of the media and the public, Tang Menjing had become Mrs. Li in their hearts, and Su Qianxi was just a decoration. She walked down the stairs step by step. The security guard opened the gate because of her arrival. Seeing this, Su Qianxi hated Tang Menjing even more. "You two go do something else. I want to talk to her alone." The two security guards looked at each other and quickly nodded. "I did not kill Grandpa." "I know. Of course you did not kill Grandpa." Tang Menjing smiled and walked outside. Soon she came to the pond opposite the Tang family's house. There was a road in front of the Tang family's house. There was a pond on the other side of the road. There were no street lights on the other side, so it was extremely difficult for Tang Menjing to tell where she was. Hearing that, Su Qianxi felt something was wrong and hurried to follow her. "What do you mean? Of course you did not kill Grandpa. You were knocked out by me. How could you have killed him?" Su Qianxi stared at her with her eyes wide open. "Was it you?" "Shu." Tang Menjing put a finger on her lips and smiled proudly. "Was really you? You bitch, Grandpa was so nice to you. Why did you?" "Nice?" Tang Menjing sneered. "If it were not for that old man, I would be the one marrying Brother Xiqing instead of you. He watched me grow up and he just doesn't like me. That old man should have died a long time ago." "You're too scary. I'm going to tell them." Su Qianxi was about to leave, but Tang Menjing was not afraid and sneered, "Do you think they will believe it?" Su Qianxi stopped where she was. "Just like how you tried to explain that you did not drug Brother Xiqing. Who would believe you?" Su Qianxi suddenly turned around and looked at her incredulously. Tang Menjing enjoyed her expression. "Just like how you said you didn't set me on fire. Who would believe that?" "What do you mean, Tang Menjing?" Something flashed in Su Qianxi's mind. "It's you?" "Yes, it's me." Tang Menjing sneered. "But so what? Do you remember when you came to my house? I almost died from gas poisoning. You said you didn't do anything. Who would believe that?" Later, Xiqing was kidnapped by a cult and almost burned to death in an abandoned warehouse. Everyone saw that I saved him, but you passed out at the scene. Who would believe that you didn't set the fire? Su Qianxi was caught off guard when the past was mentioned, and she subconsciously reached out to touch her face. She tried to push Li Xiqing out of the fire, but it was too late for her to escape. The fire destroyed half of her face and her entire life. She was the illegitimate daughter of the Su family. When she came back to the Su family at the age of 18, she knew that the man she was going to marry was called Li Xiqing. However, she did not know that he had a childhood sweetheart named Tang Menjing. Since she married him at the age of 20, she had been constantly compared to him. Tang Menjing was dignified and generous, while Su Qianxi was rude. Tang Menjing was kind and beautiful, while Su Qianxi was cruel. Tang Menjing had studied abroad and married Li Xiqing before she graduated from college. Su Qianxi had foolishly regarded Su Qianxi as her best friend from the age of 18 to 25, not knowing that everything she had was ruined by Su Qianxi. Everyone knew that she was the one who drugged Tang Menjing at the wedding to stimulate Tang Menjing. She was the one who set the fire that almost killed Tang Menjing. She deliberately fell down the stairs and miscarried the baby to frame Tang Menjing. It was almost ingrained that no one saw what she had done to deserve Li Xiqing. When she stayed up late to help Li Xiqing change the plan, they said she was pretentious. When she learned to cook to help Li Xiqing recover from his stomach disease, they said she was scheming. In order to fulfill Grandpa's wish of having a great-grandchild, she dropped out of school to take care of the baby. They said she was not ambitious. After the Su family went bankrupt, they said she was a snob. After the baby was miscarried, they said she had done too much and did not deserve to be pregnant. Even God wanted to take the baby away. Later, she gradually understood that whatever Tang Menjing did was right, and whatever she did was wrong. Until yesterday when she woke up and found Grandpa dead on the stairs on the first floor. When she looked down from the second floor, the police broke in and Su Qianxi became the murderer. "You bitch. Bitch. Why did you do this to me?" Su Qianxi lunged at Tang Menjing. Tang Menjing had learned martial arts. She caught Su Qianxi and pushed her into the pond. Choking on the water, Su Qianxi struggled. Help! Gulp, gulp. Chapter 2. The storm faded and everything was calm again. Su Qianxi's consciousness came back bit by bit, and she clearly felt the pain in her body. There was no part of her body that was not sore and painful. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her eyes suddenly opened. Exquisite wood carvings in ancient Chinese style were hanging on the ceiling. This was the old house of the Li family? Su Qianxi sat up abruptly, but the soreness in her body made her gasp. Sitting there, Su Qianxi found that she was actually naked. On her chest and collarbone, there were blue and purple marks scattered, looking a bit scary. Looking sideways, she saw someone was lying next to her. She gasped and subconsciously pulled the quilt to cover herself, shrinking to the side. The man in front of her was extremely handsome. His thick eyebrows slightly frowned and he quickly opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, Su Qianxi's eyes were filled with deep amazement. No matter how many times she saw this face, it was enough for her to look at it again. His eyes were as dark as the night sky, with natural arrogance and nobility, with a hazy sleepiness. However, the moment he saw Su Qianxi, his eyes burst out as sharp as an eagle's. At this moment he looked only 25 or 26 years old. Su Qianxi was a bit dazed. Suddenly her arm was grabbed. His face quickly approached and he growled, "Su Qianxi, how dare you drug me?" This seemed to be a familiar scene. When she was set up by Tang Menjing to sleep with Li Xiqing, the next day when she woke up, he said the same thing. Looking at him blankly, she quickly said, "I will leave. Don't worry." After the divorce, he arranged a large amount of alimony and a house for her. If Tang Menjing had not killed Grandpa in her house, she would not have appeared here. Although she was saved from the water, she did not think that he would want to see her. It must be another evil plan by Tang Menjing. Little did she know how much impact her words had on him. The woman who had tried so hard to sleep with him wanted to leave after drugging him and sleeping with him? Gazing at the woman, he found that she was not joking at all. There was no trace of her usual arrogance, rebelliousness, and unruliness. Her expression was calm and indifferent, like a person who had experienced despair, and all that was left of her was sorrow. Staring at her for a long while, he sneered and grabbed her hand. "What are you playing at now? First you drugged me and now, you're playing hard to get?" His voice was very pleasant to listen to, deep and mellow like a cello, but every word that came out of his mouth was filled with dense malice. The woman in front of him had skin whiter than snow, so fair and delicate that not a single pore could be seen. She had a pair of big black grape-like eyes that were slightly panicked and dazed. She was looking at him like a frightened deer, not knowing what to do. "I didn't. Let go of me." She wanted to pull her hand away but found that he was too strong. While he was struggling, the quilt in front of him slid down. He looked down and suddenly felt like thousands of ants were crawling over him, making him very uncomfortable. Damn it. He tried to force himself to look away. Su Qianxi blushed and quickly pulled the quilt over to cover herself. Although she had been married to him for 5 years, she had only had sex with him once. That time, she had only succeeded because Tang Menjing had drugged her. Since then he had regarded her as a virus. He did not even want to sleep in the same room with her, let alone touch her. At this moment they were naked, and Su Qianxi's face was as red as blood. "Let go of me, Li Xiqing. You can even eat an ugly girl like me. Did Tang Menjing not satisfy you?" Su Qianxi was angry. "Tang Menjing? So, you still know that you are ugly." Li Xiqing sneered and looked at her panicked eyes. Under her fair nose, her lips were slightly open, moist and full. It was easy to think of one word, suitable for kissing. Swallowing hard, he stared at her lips, and his eyes became deep and mysterious. Su Qianxi suddenly felt humiliated. If it were not for Tang Menjing, she would not have been disfigured. "Let go of me." Su Qianxi moved and Li Xiqing could not help hissing. "Don't move," he growled. "Ha." Su Qianxi sneered. "You want a woman? Go to Tang Menjing. You want an ugly girl like me? Li Xiqing, aren't you a bit too hardcore?" Saying that, she felt sad and her eyes became red. For so many years she had been compared to Tang Menjing in every way. She was not as good as Tang Menjing in every way. Tang Menjing was a fairy and she was dust on the ground. This feeling was absolutely not good. Li Xiqing's eyes became darker. Holding her hand, he pressed her under him. "You want me to go to Tang Menjing for everything? Then why do I need you as my legal wife?" Su Qianxi was dazed and suddenly widened her eyes. Legal wife. Seeing her expression, Li Xiqing sneered cruelly. The old man asked me to get that marriage certificate for you. Didn't he want me to have sex with you? He tried so hard to drug me and then he played this trick on me? I did not. Su Qianxi was angry. Chapter 3. The storm faded and everything was calm again. Su Qianxi's consciousness came back bit by bit, and she clearly felt the pain in her body. There was no part of her body that was not sore and painful. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her eyes suddenly opened. Exquisite wood carvings in ancient Chinese style were hanging on the ceiling. This was the old house of the Li family? Su Qianxi sat up abruptly, but the soreness in her body made her gasp. Sitting there, Su Qianxi found that she was actually naked. On her chest and collarbone, there were blue and purple marks scattered, looking a bit scary. Looking sideways, she saw someone was lying next to her. She gasped and subconsciously pulled the quilt to cover herself, shrinking to the side. The man in front of her was extremely handsome. His thick eyebrows slightly frowned and he quickly opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, Su Qianxi's eyes were filled with deep amazement. No matter how many times she saw this face, it was enough for her to look at it again. His eyes were as dark as the night sky, with natural arrogance and nobility, with a hazy sleepiness. However, the moment he saw Su Qianxi, his eyes burst out as sharp as an eagle's. At this moment he looked only 25 or 26 years old. Su Qianxi was a bit dazed. Suddenly her arm was grabbed. His face quickly approached and he growled, "Su Qianxi, how dare you drug me?" This seemed to be a familiar scene. When she was set up by Tang Menjing to sleep with Li Xiqing, the next day when she woke up, he said the same thing. Looking at him blankly, she quickly said, "I will leave. Don't worry." After the divorce, he arranged a large amount of alimony and a house for her. If Tang Menjing had not killed Grandpa in her house, she would not have appeared here. Although she was saved from the water, she did not think that he would want to see her. It must be another evil plan by Tang Menjing. Little did she know how much impact her words had on him. The woman who had tried so hard to sleep with him wanted to leave after drugging him and sleeping with him? Gazing at the woman, he found that she was not joking at all. There was no trace of her usual arrogance, rebelliousness, and unruliness. Her expression was calm and indifferent, like a person who had experienced despair, and all that was left of her was sorrow. Staring at her for a long while, he sneered and grabbed her hand. "What are you playing at now? First you drugged me and now, you're playing hard to get?" His voice was very pleasant to listen to, deep and mellow like a cello, but every word that came out of his mouth was filled with dense malice. The woman in front of him had skin whiter than snow, so fair and delicate that not a single pore could be seen. She had a pair of big black grape-like eyes that were slightly panicked and dazed. She was looking at him like a frightened deer, not knowing what to do. Didn't let go of me." She wanted to pull her hand away but found that he was too strong. While he was struggling, the quilt in front of him slid down. He looked down and suddenly felt like thousands of ants were crawling over him, making him very uncomfortable. Damn it. He tried to force himself to look away. She blushed and quickly pulled the quilt over to cover herself. Although she had been married to him for 5 years, she had only had sex with him once. That time, she had only succeeded because Tang Menjing had drugged her. Since then he had regarded her as a virus. He did not even want to sleep in the same room with her, let alone touch her. At this moment they were naked, and Su Qianxi's face was as red as blood. "Let go of me, Li Xiqing. You can even eat an ugly girl like me. Did Tang Menjing not satisfy you?" She was angry. "Tang Menjing? So, you still know that you are ugly." Li Xiqing sneered and looked at her panicked eyes. Under her fair nose, her lips were slightly open, moist and full. It was easy to think of one word: suitable for kissing. Swallowing hard, he stared at her lips, and his eyes became deep and mysterious. Su Qianxi suddenly felt humiliated. If it were not for Tang Menjing, she would not have been disfigured. "Let go of me." She moved her body and Li Xiqing could not help hissing. "Don't move," he growled. "Ha." Su Qianxi sneered. "You want a woman? Go to Tang Menjing. You want an ugly girl like me? Li Xiqing, aren't you a bit too hardcore?" Saying that, she felt sad and her eyes became red. For so many years she had been compared to Tang Menjing in every way. She was not as good as Tang Menjing in every way. Tang Menjing was a fairy and she was dust on the ground. This feeling was absolutely not good. Li Xiqing's eyes became darker. Holding her hand, he said, "You want me to go to Tang Menjing for everything. Then why do I want you as my legal wife?" Su Chenxi was dazed and suddenly widened her eyes. Legal wife. Seeing her expression, Li Xiqing sneered cruelly. The old man asked me to get that marriage certificate for you. Didn't he want me to have sex with you? He tried so hard to drug me and then he played this trick on me? I did not. Su Chenxi was angry. Li Xiqing did not seem to hear it. Holding her chin with his big hand, he asked, "Do you know what a legal wife is?" Su Chenxi stared at him and did not speak. A legitimate tool. Lifting her chin, he kissed her. Su Chenxi's eyes widened and she struggled desperately. A legitimate tool? She struggled even harder, turned her head away and yelled, "Li Xiqing, we are divorced. You are raping me." Li Xiqing paused slightly. His dark eyes flashed with doubt and his eyebrows furrowed. Divorce? They had only been married for 3 days, and this woman was already thinking about divorce? What was she playing at? Let go of me. Su Chenxi did not notice his reaction. Struggling with all her strength, she sobbed and roared, "So dirty. Don't touch me. Don't touch me." His mouth and his body had been with Tang Menjing countless times. The man who had touched that woman was so dirty, so dirty. Outside the room there was a knock on the door. "Brother Xiqing, are you up?" It was her, Tang Menjing. He calmed himself down and looked at the door. Su Chenxi took the opportunity and pushed him to the side of the bed. She rolled off the bed with the quilt wrapped around her body. "If you don't want to talk, I'll come in." Tang Menjing's voice was sweet and lovely, like a little girl next door. However, only Su Chenxi knew how vicious she was. The door was pushed open. When Tang Menjing poked her head in, a big red pillow was thrown at her before she could see clearly. Li Xiqing's cold voice came, "Get out." Tang Menjing was hit in the face. Before she could see what was happening, she was pushed away by a strong force. The door to the room was pushed shut and locked in one smooth motion. Li Xiqing turned around and looked at Su Chenxi, who had rolled herself up like a mummy. He felt angry and amused at the same time. What was this woman playing at? Su Chenxi's face was covered in tears, but when she looked down, she suddenly blushed again. Su Chenxi turned her head and covered her face. However, she found that her face had become very smooth. Afraid that she was wrong, Su Chenxi touched it several times. It was smooth and delicate. There was no scar left by the fire at all. Su Chenxi found that she was surrounded by red. The double happiness logo was pasted on the headboard, the door, and even the pillow that Li Xiqing had used to throw Tang Menjing was a festive red. The quilt. The bedsheet. Su Chenxi's eyes fell on the bedsheet. The light red bedsheet and the dried blood were particularly eye-catching. What did it mean? The old house of the Li family, the double happiness logo, and this red? Her heart suddenly raced. She began to think of a crazy possibility. Breathing quickly, she looked at Li Xiqing. "What year, month, and day is it now?" He looked at her like she was an idiot. "You've only been married for 3 days and you're already so good at acting. Su Chenxi, I really underestimated you." Then he ignored her and walked to the bathroom, holding back the desire in his eyes. Chapter 4. At the age of 20, her facial features still looked a bit immature, but they had slowly matured. Big almond-shaped eyes, thin eyebrows, and a straight nose put together on her oval face, delicate and beautiful. There were some bottles and cans on the dresser, all of which were famous luxury brands. Before she married Li Xiqing, she was encouraged to buy these things by Tang Menjing, who she thought of as her best friend, saying that to show off her identity, nothing should be too bad. She believed it at that time. Under the guidance of Tang Menjing, she bought almost all the famous luxury skincare products that were completely not suitable for her. In the end, they were all thrown into the trash. Li Xiqing saw all of this, and it was these details that made him hate his wife more and more. Every time she thought of these things, she regretted it. She always thought about what she would do if she could go back to the past. She did not expect that this day would really come. She let out a low laugh, and then her laughter became louder and louder. Tears suddenly fell down her face. She died and she did not die. She was reborn. At that time, she loved Li Xiqing for 5 years and stayed by his side for 5 years. In order to become a good rich wife, she learned all kinds of etiquette, musical instruments, languages, finance, and business management. As long as he liked it, she learned it all. However, although she was good enough to be a good wife, she did not get any recognition, only endless comparison and contempt. She had lived for Li Xiqing in her previous life. Now that she could do it again, she must live well for herself. Knock knock. Someone knocked on the door, interrupting her thoughts. Who is it? There was silence at the door. No answer was the best answer. She already knew the answer. Not in a hurry to open the door, she opened the closet and saw a full closet of luxury goods. Tang Minjing helped her choose them. Each of them was expensive, but none of them matched her current age and temperament. After frowning for a long time, she still chose her old clothes. This was just an ordinary brand of clothing. Although it did not quite match her identity, it was very suitable for her age and temperament. She climbed to the top and took off her underwear. When she was about to put on her underwear, the door of the bathroom was suddenly opened, and a faint heat wafted over. Startled, she subconsciously covered her chest and turned her back to him. Li Xiqing was wearing a black silk bathrobe, which clearly outlined his strong muscles. He was 188 centimeters tall, and his slightly curly black hair was still dripping water. He stared at her smooth back without blinking. Her smooth, white skin was like the best silk, and there were a few strands of purple marks on it, letting him clearly know the madness and brutality of last night. The atmosphere became awkward. He did not move and she was too embarrassed to turn around. There was another knock on the door and Su Qianxi's words were blocked. He looked away. Put it on. It was short, but it did not allow for criticism. He opened the door and saw the person outside. Frowning, he asked, "What's up?" Chapter 5. Tang Minjing's voice was not loud, but Su Qianxi already had mixed feelings. In her previous lifetime, Tang Minjing had directly broken in. At that time, Li Xiqing was taking a shower, and she had loudly announced that Su Qianxi had drugged her new husband. Li Xiqing, who was already suspicious, hated her even more. "What's up?" Li Xiqing still asked the same question. Tang Minjing forced a smile and deliberately hid her face behind her, as if she was trying to hide something. She shook her head and said, "Nothing." Li Xiqing's eyes fell on her hands behind her back and quickly looked away. Seeing that he was not going to say anything, Tang Minjing was a bit anxious. She simply threw the thing in her hand away, and the sound of something breaking came from the floor. Tang Minjing exclaimed as if she was scared and said, What should I do?" Li Xiqing glanced at the thing on the floor and immediately saw the words on it. That was the name of the most famous aphrodisiac. Although Li Xiqing did not study it, he had heard a little about it. Tang Minjing actually carried this with her? As if afraid that Li Xiqing would misunderstand, Tang Minjing quickly waved her hand and said, Brother Xiqing, don't get me wrong. It is not mine. I am just keeping it for Su Qianxi. Keeping what for me? Su Qianxi walked out from behind, took the door from Li Xiqing's hand and opened it. From Tang Minjing's angle, she could see the mottled spots on the wedding bed and the messy bedding. Jealousy suddenly rose in Li Xiqing's heart. Tang Minjing forced a smile and said, "It is? The thing you left on the table last night. I was afraid that Andy would see it, so I put it away for you." Li Xiqing's eyes fell on Su Qianxi's face like a bolt of lightning. However, he did not see a trace of panic on her face. Her dark and bright eyes were as clear as a spring without any impurities. Hearing what Tang Minjing said, he was a bit confused. He squatted down and picked it up. "What is this? What is it used for?" Although she said that, she had already recognized the real identity of the bottle. Narrowing her eyes, she looked very calm. Curiously, she looked up at Tang Minjing, looking innocent and harmless. Tang Minjing was slightly surprised and quickly said, "Of course I don't know. How would I know the use of such a thing?" "This thing?" She was even more confused and quickly asked, "This thing, what is it?" Tang Minjing gritted her teeth in surprise. How did this idiot girl react so quickly today? It seemed to be a little different. But what was different? Looking down, Su Qianxi's face was pale and rosy. Her delicate and smooth skin was indescribably tender. At the age of 20, it was like a tender peach. From her angle, she could see the bruises under her neckline. Tang Minjing gritted her teeth, her heart burning with jealousy. It was this bottle of medicine that helped Su Qianxi successfully climb into his bed. However, her goal was not just to get Su Qianxi into his bed, but to make him hate her and hate her. Chapter 6. Did I pour a drink last night? Su Qianxi asked. You gave me those 2 drinks, didn't you? Chapter 7. Tang Minjing's heart almost jumped out of her throat. Look at Tang
looking
Minjing.
at Su Qianxi in surprise.
He quickly looked away and said,
When did
coldly,
this woman become
"You
so
go first.
smart?
After all, this
Not
is a
only
wedding
did she
room."
not fall into the
Although
trap
his
that she had
attitude
set
was
up,
still cold,
but she had also
it was
led
much better
to the
than when
pit
he was
after
with
many
Su
turns.
Qianxi.
Tang
Cold
Minjing
sweat
was
dripped
pleasantly
from her
surprised.
Looking
Was he
down,
thinking
Tang
of her and
Minjing
helping her
easily
get
saw
out of
the
it?
mark on her collar.
Her heart felt like it was
Gritting her
covered with
teeth,
honey.
she insisted. She just
"You
said,
asked me to pour
"Okay,
it, didn't
and
you?"
turned around,
Su
looking
Qianxi,
back
I thought
several
you were a
times
good
as she
friend.
walked away.
Why did you?
Li Xiqing's curly
short
eyes
hair
were
was
as
sharp
sharp
as
as
dripping
eagles,
water.
staring at Su Qianxi.
He squinted at Su
Feeling a
Qianxi,
chill,
his
Su
eyes
Qianxi
cold
already
and
had an
mysterious
answer.
without any
One
emotion.
was his childhood
Soon he
sweetheart,
turned around
and
and
the
went
other
back
was
to
his
the
wife
room.
who had only been
Su
with him for
Qianxi
3
stood at the
days.
door,
Looking
should he
at the
believe?
broken glass on
The
the
answer
floor,
was
her
self-evident.
hands in her arms.
Feeling extremely reluctant,
Su Qianxi stood up from the ground,
get back at
looked
you
at
little
Li
by
Xiqing
little
for the
sharp
life
eyes
you
and
ruined.
asked, "What
It was
about
already
me?"
past 10
You,
o'clock
on
in
the
the
other
morning
hand,
when he was
knocking
done
on the
cleaning
door
up.
of a newlywed
After a
couple
night of
early
indulgence,
in the morning.
Su Qianxi's
If I
body
didn't
was
know
sore.
better, I would have
Even
thought
when
that
she
you were
walked,
up to no
she
good.
felt her legs were
Tang
trembling.
Minjing's face
"Hey,
paled.
you're up so late?
Was this Su
You're
Qianxi
indeed
still the
mistress.
same Su Qianxi?
Our Tang Minjing
How
is
come
not
she
so
had
lucky."
changed so much in just
A
a few
sharp
days?
voice came.
He had become
Su
calm,
Qianxi looked
mature,
over
and
and saw a lady
smarter.
in her 40s or
Li
50s.
Xiqing quickly changed
Mrs.
the
Li
topic
was
and
talking to a
focused on
rich
Tang
woman next
Minjing.
to her.
With such
Hearing the
IQ and
voice,
EQ,
she also
she
looked
was
over with
completely different
embarrassment
from
and
the unruly girl in
dissatisfaction.
Su Qianxi's
This
memory.
was the Li family's
Was it
neighbor
her
for many
illusion?
years, Mrs.
No,
Tang,
impossible.
and also Tang
This idiot girl
Minjing's
was
biological
definitely
mother.
afraid. She had
After
thought
all,
that the
if
Tang
Li Xiqing
family
thought
and the
that
Li
she had
family were
drugged
going
Su
to be married,
Qianxi,
but
there
Su
would be no
Qianxi
chance
suddenly
for her to
appeared
make
out
a
of nowhere.
comeback.
It was
Everyone
normal
had a
for
bottom
Mrs.
line,
Tang to be
and Li
angry.
Xiqing's was
In her previous
unpredictable.
lifetime,
However,
it was this
any
sentence
kind of
from
scheme
Mrs.
would
Tang
trigger
that
his
brought her a
lightning
lot of
point.
trouble. No matter
At
how
that
big or
time,
small it was.
Su Qianxi
Blinking,
considered herself
Tang
the
Minjing
mistress
looked
of the Li
aggrieved.
family and had a
How
bad
could I be
temper.
up to no good?
When Mrs. Tang said
Qianxi, what
something
do you
so
mean by
obviously
that?
against her,
That's so
Su
hurtful.
Qianxi was
As she
immediately
said that,
angered
her
and
eyes
immediately
turned red
replied,
and her tears
"This
fell
is my
like
home.
soybeans. Why do you
I was
care
just
so
angry.
much? You can
That
tell
was
me if I
exactly
made you
what
what
Mrs.
Mrs. Tang wanted."
Then
She
all
looked
the
at Li
rich women
Xiqing and
started
said,
to criticize
"Brother
her,
Xiqing,
and her
her
reputation
reputation became worse
I
and
thought that
worse.
even if you married
Since
another
then,
woman,
all
we could
the rich
still be
women
like
knew that the
before,
Li
but I
family
didn't
had married
expect
a lazy
Su
daughter-in-law who
Qianxi's
did
heart
not know
sank.
any manners,
Tang Minjing.
which ruined half
These
of the
few
good
words
reputation
sounded
of the
like
Li
an
family.
explanation, but in
It was
fact, he was
precisely this
avoiding the
incident
incident
that started
putting
the
all the
nightmare
blame on
of
Su
endless
Qianxi.
comparison between her
Sniffing,
and
Tang
Tang
Minjing
Minjing
squatted
But
down in
now,
a
of
hurry.
course, she would not
I
repeat the same
accidentally
mistake.
broke this bottle.
Hearing
It would
this,
be
she
bad if
lowered
the
her head
elders saw
slightly
it.
and said
I will
shyly
take
in a
it
low
away
voice,
immediately.
The more she said
little
this,
late
the
last
more it
night.
seemed that she had been
I was
wrong.
too tired,
So,
when Tang Minjing
seeing
was
Su
about to
Qianxi
pick it
like
up,
this,
a
the
cold
ladies
voice
sitting
came
on the
from
sofa
above.
waiting to see
"Get
Li
up."
Xiqing's daughter-in-law
She looked
all had
pitifully.
ambiguous smiles
Tea
on
and
their
Li Xiqing,
faces.
Su Qianxi.
Today was not only
She
the
picked up
third
the
day of
glass.
her marriage with
Li
Li
Xiqing
Xiqing,
pulled Tang
but also
Minjing
Li
up,
Xiqing's
looked at
mother's
Su's
birthday,
birthday, and said,
Mrs.
"Clean
Li's
it up.
birthday was very
It's
grand
okay,
every
Brother
year.
Xiqing."
It was only
Tang
early in the
Minjing
morning,
looked pitiful
and the
with
people
her
who
watery
came were all
eyes.
Mrs. Li's close friends and neighbors. They were very interested in this daughter-in-law of
of the Lee family. Oh my, is this your wife? She's so beautiful. That's right. When she said she's from the Su family, I thought, yeah, I didn't expect her to be Elder Su's granddaughter. She really looks like her mother. Chapter 8. She had been an orphan since she was a child. Except for her name, she had nothing else. It was not until her uncle brought her home at the age of 18 that she learned that she was the granddaughter of a famous family in Kingstown. The daughter of the Su family, Su Han, was pregnant out of wedlock and disappeared 18 years ago. No one knew if she was dead or alive. Hearing that, Mrs. Li did not look too happy. She glanced at Su Qianxi coldly. Su Qianxi knew that Mrs. Li hated her, so she did not want to get on her bad side. She smiled at the ladies who were praising her but did not say anything. She walked up and said, "Mom?" Mrs. Li did not want to be nice to her, but in front of so many people she had to hold back her dissatisfaction. She nodded and looked at her expressionlessly. "Auntie, happy birthday." Tang Minjing's voice came with surprise and joy. She looked over and saw Tang Minjing walking in with a big box in her hand, smiling brightly. Tang Minjing was good-looking in the first place, with thin eyebrows and big eyes. Her nose was straight and round, and her sharp chin seemed to have been deliberately cut with a knife. Her lips were pink and her eyes were curved when she smiled. When Mrs. Li saw her, a smile immediately appeared on her expressionless face. She said to her, "Why are you here so early? You just came back from Australia a few days ago. Why don't you sleep a little longer to get rid of the jet lag?" Tang Minjing playfully stuck out her tongue and said, "I have been back for a few days. Today is your birthday. How can I not come to congratulate you because I was sleeping?" She approached with a smile and put the big box in her hand on the coffee table in the middle of the ladies. "What is this? I am so jealous. We can receive gifts from Tang Minjing every year. For us, we are also neighbors, but Tang Minjing does not care about us so much." "Exactly, but I thought Tang Minjing would become your daughter-in-law. I did not expect." However, before Mrs. Zhang finished, Mrs. Li next to her patted her hand. Mrs. Zhang's smile suddenly froze and she looked at Tang Minjing awkwardly. Tang Minjing seemed a bit embarrassed and blushed. Soon everyone looked at Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi acted as if she did not hear it, standing on the side and looking forward. Meeting their eyes, she smiled gently and said, "I'll go cut some fruit for you. Sit down first." "No, the servants will do that." Mrs. Li's smile faded. "Sit down in case someone says I mistreat my daughter-in-law." No matter how stupid those noble madams were, they could tell that something was fishy. True, she was an illegitimate daughter. Furthermore, it was an illegitimate daughter of an unknown father. What right did she have to marry into the Li family? If it were not for the insistence of Li Xiqing's grandfather, even threatening to kill himself, no one in the Li family would agree to let Su Qianxi in. In Mrs. Li's opinion, Su Qianxi did not deserve to be the daughter-in-law of the Li family. Su Qianxi sat down in a corner, discreetly staying away from Mrs. Li. In her previous life, she naturally sat next to Mrs. Li and was driven away by Mrs. Li. Not only was she embarrassed, she was also ridiculed by Tang Minjing. Chapter 9. It's okay. Tang Minjing smiled. "I like to prepare gifts for Auntie. Open it and have a look." Mrs. Li did not refuse. She quickly pulled off the ribbon and opened the layers of packaging. Finally, she saw a beautiful green cheongsam. Everyone was stunned when they saw it. "So beautiful. Is this embroidery?" Chapter 10. "It's so beautiful." Su Qianxi looked
Mrs.
even
Li
more
could not
puzzled.
stop smiling.
"But I think this
Hearing
embroidery
the
style
compliments
is
around
indeed
her,
the
she
technique
looked
of the
proud
old
and
Kingstown cheongsam
Mrs.
master."
Tang came over
"Look,
and
there is
chimed
a
in.
little curve
My
where the
Minjing
needle
is
ends.
really good with her
This is the
hands.
unique technique
Look at
of
the
craftsmanship."
craftsmanship.
It took
Tang
her a long
Minjing's
time to
smile
finish
froze.
it. It took her a
Mrs.
long
Tang
time.
directly slapped her hand
Her
away
words
and
caused
said
a stir
grumpily,
among the ladies.
"You only know how to
Everyone
brag.
was surprised.
If you want to suck up to
Tang Minjing
made it herself,
you should be more direct." "Amazing. She is indeed
She's so
very good at
skillful.
embroidery, not something
Wow,
you can
so
compare
skillful
with."
and beautiful.
Mrs. Li
Tang
was also a
Minjing,
bit
come and
unhappy.
be our daughter-in-law.
Looking at Su
Tang
Qianxi
Minjing
coldly,
smiled
she said,
gracefully,
"What do you know?
looking like a lady
You have
from a
only seen a few
respectable family.
capeos and you are
She
talking
accepted
about
all the
embroidery.
compliments without
Don't
being
embarrass
stingy at all."
yourself." Mrs. Li
Hearing
sighed
that,
in her
Tang
heart.
Minjing's
What a
expression
sin.
softened a bit.
If only Tang
Although he
Minjing
didn't know
was her
how this
daughter-in-law,
idiot girl knew,
why did
no
she
one would
marry
believe
such a
the
woman
words that came out of her
Thinking
mouth.
of that, she gave
Sure
Su
enough,
Qianxi
the
a
rich ladies
resentful
all
look,
looked at Su
and the
Qianxi
smile on
with
her face
condemnation.
faded. Mrs.
Su
Li
Qianxi
said,
knew exactly
Tang
what
Minjing
Mrs.
spent
Li
so
was
much
thinking.
effort to make a
What
cheap
was
pal for your
happening now
mother-in-law.
was exactly the
Isn't
same
it
as what had
inappropriate
happened
for
in
you
her
to say
previous
that?
lifetime.
Everyone
If you
was
are good at
praising
it,
Tang
you can give it to
Minjing,
her, but
and Su
don't slander
Qianxi
her.
was the foil.
That's to me.
However, at this
I
time,
was wondering why
Su
your
Qianxi,
mother-in-law
what
did
gift
not
did
like
you
you.
prepare for
Now
Auntie?
I finally understand.
Tang Minjing
With such a
successfully changed the
daughter-in-law,
topic
even
to
I
Su
would not
Qianxi.
like her.
She smiled
Don't say
gracefully
that.
and kindly. Tang
Just as
Minjing
she
looked sympathetic. In the
Su
eyes of
Qianxi
others,
did not do it
this
on
kind of
purpose.
action was a kind
Maybe she
act
made
to
a
avoid
mistake.
her embarrassment.
What did she make
However,
a mistake?
Su Qianxi knew
Mrs.
that Tang
Tang's voice
Minjing
was
was just
a bit
trying
sharp.
to embarrass her.
If she made a mistake,
Back then,
how could she
Su
say
Qianxi
that?
had smiled
If she made a
awkwardly at
mistake,
Tang
she would go
Minjing's
to heaven.
kindness. Su Qianxi glanced at Mrs. Tang coldly and said, specially
Mrs.
prepared
Tang,
for her,
this is indeed
but it was
Mr.
nothing
AI's
compared
work.
to the Chong
I
San
have
that
proof.
Tang Menjing had made
Mrs.
herself.
Tang sneered and
After
looked
Tang
disdainful.
Menjing took it out in
I
front
thought
of
the Su
everyone,
family
Mrs.
brought you
Tang
back
said,
and taught you
how
for 2
could she be
years.
the daughter-in-law
Now I
of the
finally
Li
know.
family?
You are a bitch
She
in your
became the
bones.
object of
No
everyone's
matter how much you
disgust.
were taught, you will
Everyone
never make a
complimented
difference.
Tang Menjing,
That was sarcastic
and Mrs. Li
mean.
hated this
The rich
daughter-in-law
ladies
even more.
became silent and
She could
looked at
not
each
wait
other.
for Li Xiqing
The
to
atmosphere
divorce her
became
and
a bit
marry
weird.
Tang Menjing.
That was really
In
a bit
the end,
harsh.
it was Tang
Everyone
Menjing
looked
who
at
spoke
Su
up to
Qianxi.
resolve the
Su
awkward
Qianxi's
situation.
face darkened as
At
she
that
pinched
time,
her arms.
Su Qianxi was
Everyone
too
thought
naive
that
to
Su
know that
Qianxi
she would
had planned it.
definitely be angry.
She was very grateful
After
to
all,
Tang
no one
Menjing.
could bear to
In
listen
her
to such
previous
words,
life, she
and
had
Su
always
Qianxi
been
was famous
optimistic
for her
and
bad
kind.
temper. She didn't
But
want to
no.
think of human
Su
nature as
Qianxi just
evil,
glanced at
but
her
she didn't
coldly and
expect that it
sneered.
was this kind
It's
of
really hard to
mentality that
change the
ruined her
inferiority
life.
in your
In this
bones.
life, she would
A
never
spoiled
make the
thief
same
became a
mistake
rich
again.
lady,
Su
and her
Qianxi
daughter is
smiled
also
and
dirty.
did not immediately answer.
Hearing that, Mrs. Tang's
Instead,
face
she looked at the
changed.
green Chong
When she
Sam
was
in
young,
Mrs. Li's
she was an
hand and asked
habitual
in
thief.
surprise. However,
Menjing,
after she
did you
married
become
Tang
the disciple
Menjing's
of
father,
Kingstown
this
Chong
dark
Sam?
history should have been forgotten. How did this be asterisk tch no? Subconsciously looking at the ladies, they all looked confused, obviously not knowing what Su Qianxi was talking about. Suppressing the shock and anger in her heart, Mrs. Tang looked away and screamed, "What do you mean? I have proof that this Chong Sam was made by Mr. AI of Old Kingstown, not Tang Menjing." Su Qianxi spoke clearly. Chapter 11. You know very well whether I am making things up or not. Su Qianxi glanced at her coldly. Tang Menjing's heart raced when she saw Su Qianxi's gaze. At that moment, something seemed to shoot out of Su Qianxi's eyes and pierced through her own. That was hatred. The hatred was so thick that it chilled her to the bone. However, when Tang Menjing looked at it again, it immediately disappeared. It was as if it was just her illusion. Was it an illusion? Su Qianxi suppressed the urge to bite the woman to death and said calmly, "Mr. AI of Old Kingstown Chong Sam has an Arab wife named Happiness. So, every time he makes a dress he will leave his symbol on the collar. It is an Arabic word which means happiness. Bulsh asterisk T. You know Arabic?" Mrs. Tang looked disdainful. "You will see if I am Bulsh asterisk T." Su Qianxi flipped up the collar. Seeing the black characters on it, Mrs. Tang blurted out, "This is just ordinary embroidery. How can you prove that it is Arabic?" Su Qianxi had expected that and called, "Auntie Lu." Auntie Lu was dazed by Su Qianxi's calmness. Caught off guard, she immediately responded, "Yes. Can you ask Li Xiqing to come out for me?" Then she looked at Mrs. Li. "You don't have to believe me, but you have to believe your son. He knows 8 languages and maybe Arabic is one of them. He'll know if it's true or not once he takes a look." Mrs. Tang panicked and shrieked, "What do you mean? Do you think Tang Menjing is lying?" Su Qianxi sneered. "I don't know if it is a lie, but this is definitely Mr. AI's embroidery." "Forget it, Mom," Tang Menjing said. Tang Menjing said, "Qianxi, it is not a big deal. Why do you have to be so aggressive? If you say so, then so be it." No. Su Qianxi's heart was trembling with hatred. "It is not a big deal for you, but what your mother said just now was really hurtful." Tang Menjing did not say anything and looked at Mrs. Tang with blame. Everyone had heard what Su Qianxi said. It was indeed outrageous. No one felt that Su Qianxi was wrong. Even Mrs. Li was a bit angry. No matter how much she disliked Su Qianxi, she was her daughter-in-law. She felt embarrassed. "If it is proven that I am right, Mrs. Tang, you have to apologize to me," Su Qianxi said. Mrs. Tang looked displeased. "Why? You don't dare. You're afraid that I'll expose your lies, right?" Mrs. Tang's face darkened. If she insisted on not letting Aunt Lu call Li Xiqing, wouldn't she be admitting that she was lying? In this way, not only her reputation, but also the Tang family and Tang Menjing's reputation would be ruined. Su Qianxi was that Li said Qianxi would have said that Xiqing could sue Menjing at. Tang Su said, "Li Shi Li, Su Qiu." Li said, "Su Shi. Qin, Su Tang Li Mrs. Tang, Li Su I." Chapter 12. "Then go and call him," Mrs. Li finally said. "Ask him to come out and explain so that you will give up." Her voice was cold, but Su Qianxi was not sure if Mrs. Li was talking about Su Qianxi or Mrs. Tang. Lu Auntie nodded and quickly ran inside to call Mrs. Li. When Li Xiqing came out, he was wearing casual home clothes, a gray cotton V-neck shirt with white casual pants. Tall and handsome, his dark eyes were like waves, and his red lips were tightly pursed as he stepped forward. Seeing the silence, he frowned and subconsciously looked at Tang Menjing asking, "What's wrong?" Habits were hard to change. The first person he saw was never Su Qianxi but Tang Menjing. Su Chenxi felt sad but she quickly suppressed it. Tang Minjing looked aggrieved and wanted to say something. However, before she could, Mrs. Li waved at her and said, "Siqing, come here. Look at this embroidery and see what it is." Li Siqing looked away and casually walked over. He glanced at Su Chenxi and saw the resentful and aggrieved face, delicate and pretty. Although not as stunning as Tang Minjing, it was very attractive. His gaze paused for a second and quickly fell on the collar in front of him. "Tell me, is this Arabic?" Li Siqing nodded. "Yes, it means happiness in Arabic." As soon as he said that, Su Chenxi's eyes suddenly became red, and she felt wronged and sad. And Mrs. Tang's face was pale. The ladies looked at each other, feeling sorry for Su Chenxi and sympathetic, while looking at Mrs. Tang and Tang Minjing with a more complicated look. "What's wrong?" Li Siqing still did not know what had happened. Seeing Su Chenxi's eyes were red, he frowned. Su Chenxi felt his gaze and looked up. In an instant their eyes met. Li Siqing's eyes were always cold and unfathomable. She had never seen a person's eyes so cold. It seemed that even if a mountain collapsed in front of him, he would not be moved. No matter what she did, he was always indifferent and mysterious. It was also this pair of eyes that caused her to sink into depravity for a lifetime and suffer for a lifetime. However, it would never happen again. It would never happen again. She would never love him again. Absolutely not in this life. Su Chenxi avoided his slightly inquisitive gaze and looked at Mrs. Tang. "Mrs. Tang, shouldn't you apologize?" Mrs. Tang did not look good, but Tang Minjing, who was standing behind her, stepped forward and said to Mrs. Tang, "I'm sorry, Mom. I lied to you." As soon as this apology fell, the ladies all exclaimed in disbelief and looked at each other in dismay. Mrs. Li was also shocked, finding it hard to believe that she would do such a thing. Chapter 13. That explains a lot. A lady who was close to Mrs. Tang said, "Mrs. Tang is not in good health, and Tang Minjing is just being filial and does not want to disappoint her." Tang Minjing lowered her head guiltily, turned around and bowed sincerely. "Sorry I did not explain in time. It was not on purpose. I was going to explain to you later. I did not expect Su Chenxi to be so serious." "That's right. How petty of you to hold on to such a small matter." Mrs. Tang said, "The Su family did not teach you well either. She is just an illegitimate daughter of the Su family. I really do not know what Captain Li is thinking." In her opinion, Tang Minjing should be the one to marry into the Li family. Mrs. Li did not look too happy. After all, Tang Minjing was her daughter-in-law. No matter how much she disliked Tang Minjing, she was still humiliated. "What do I think? It seems that my niece-in-law really wants to know," an old voice chimed in, full of energy. Everyone was shocked and turned their heads to take a look. Captain Li, Dad?" The person who came in was an old man who had already entered his 60s. However, he was still strong despite his age. His back was straight, and his every movement revealed the heroic bearing of a frontier soldier. This was one of the people that Su Chenxi respected the most, the leader of the Li family and the person with the highest status in the family, Captain Li. Seeing the old man, Su Chenxi couldn't help straightening her back, which was the result of years of habit. She did not know that in Li Siqing's eyes, her habitual movement made his already deep eyes even darker. Hearing the voice of Captain Li, Mrs. Tang's chubby face paled, and then she quickly explained, "No, Captain Li, I just said it casually. Don't take it to heart. How would I know what you think?" Su Chenxi sneered inwardly. When he was facing her just now, he was so arrogant that his tail was about to stick up, but when he was facing his grandfather, he was so timid. The difference was really not a little big. With just a few casual words, you're able to criticize the granddaughter-in-law that I personally selected. If I didn't know better, I would have thought that you came to my Li family to declare war on me, Li Sun. His voice was neither soft nor heavy, but it was full of authority. Mrs. Tang was startled by such a compliment. When she was about to explain, she was stopped by a pair of hands. Tang Minjing held her mother's hand and looked at Captain Li. "Grandpa Li, long time no see." Captain Li glanced at her and nodded. His eyes fell on Su Chenxi, and a happy smile appeared on his old face. He waved at her and said, "Chan, come to Grandpa." She stepped forward and stood beside him, calling endearment for a long time.
Good
Since
girl.
she was framed as
Captain
an
Li
arsonist
smiled
by Tang
so much
Minjing,
that the wrinkles on his
Grandpa
face
had not
were all
called her
folded.
that.
At
He
the
was
very
so kind
least,
that it was
should have
hard
been
to
2
associate
years.
him with the old
Su
captain.
Chenxi's
Su's eyes were
Did you
slightly
sleep well?
wet. "Are you used to living in the old house?" Chapter 14. You will get used to it. In this family, I don't think anyone bullies you, right? No. Everyone in the family is very nice to me. No one bullies me. Su Chenxi was very sensible. Captain Lee nodded with satisfaction and said with a smile, "That's good." However,
If
when
anyone
Su
bullies
Chenxi
you,
thought
you
she
must
was
tell
going to
Grandpa,
fall,
a
not
long
only
and
in the
powerful
family
arm
but
wrapped
also
around her
outside the
waist.
family. Everyone at the scene was
Chapter
smart,
15.
so they naturally
Su Chenxi's
understood that
heart
there was a
skipped a
hidden
beat,
meaning in
but her
Captain
reason
Lee's
made her
words.
come back to reality.
Mrs. Tang's face
Mrs.
standing
Lee
up
looked
at
at
pushed
Su
Tang on
Chenxi
the
with
side,
curiosity
her hand
and
touched the
gratification.
smooth and delicate
Tang
skin,
mentioned his
smiled
daughter
well
walked
defined
with
Captain
muscles,
Lee,
face in
and
front
her
of his
grandpa,
said
"You are
well
right.
burned.
Brother's
This man
teaching is
was
at
a
home."
monster.
Chapter
Even
16.
outside,
was
I
his
will be
face
as
good
good-looking.
looking?
You can
But
rest
even
assured.
my uncle asked me to
Captain Lee
heard
heard
that,
that,
glanced
leaving
at
his
her
sneered
sneered
health.
and said,
Thinking
"It
of
is
Captain
good
Lee
that you
didn't
can
show
think
any
that mind."
emotion on his
Su
face.
Chenxi
He
couldn't help
he
but
smiled
was about to
kindly
say
and said,
something.
"I have one
Captain Lee
hard.
suddenly
Ah,
turned
thank
his
you,
head
Uncle,
with
for
the
the
dirty
dirty
thoughts.
teaching.
Since
Who
there
had
was
been
an
quickly
order,
looking away,
gifts
she
should be
looked up
given
and saw
from
his
the oldest
sudden
to the
change
youngest.
made Tang
For
Menji
some reason,
swallow
Su
the words
Chenxi
she was
smiled,
about to say,
and there was a trace of
understanding
but
in
she
her
could not
beautiful
say it
eyes.
either.
Continue.
She
This
was
pen was
extremely
not a
Su
gift
Chenxi
from her
was about to
uncle,
run
but her
away.
own.
Her
Lee
arm
Si
was
Chu was
firmly
stopping
with
with
Tang Menji
Continue.
standing in the
She saw
corner
her
like a
Lee's
voice
voice
was
was
very
persuaded
low
by
and
Tang
mellow.
Menji,
Like
hearing
a cup of
Captain Lee's
carefully
voice
spent more than
$100,000
intoxicating
and
sense
never
of
everyone's sight.
Su
However,
Chenxi was
not
caught
long
off
after
guard.
Tang
Her
Menji
body was
today
out
should be
as
the
the
Thursday
Thursday
of your wedding,
wasteful,
right?
a pair of
Which caused her to be
big eyes
despised
wide.
by everyone.
Su
Pursing
Chenxi
his
looked
lip,
at
the
the
man
man
in
in
front of
front of
her
was
upon his
dark
dark
eyes
eyes
filled
in
with
front
a
of
layer of
However,
surprise.
seeing his grandpa
According
stare
to
what
her
I just wanted to
understanding
do,
of Tang
let me
Menji,
continue.
Tang
I know
Menji
you
his
well.
voice was
Surprised
low
and
and
Captain Lee
lingering.
patted him on the shoulder.
His heart could not
Don't
help but
embarrass
freeze
the
up.
family.
Some
How
people
did it
said
begin
that
when
your
a man
uncle
was
Lee
the
Cixi put his
just as
hand
she
in
was
his
when his
pocket.
voice went up.
When Tang Menji
did not know about
slowly
slowly
walked into the room,
was so nervous. The ladies all
However,
looked at
Su
each other.
Chenxi was not afraid
Everyone
of
could
being
tell that
exposed.
Captain Lee was
When she was
said,
afraid of
"Don't you
what
want to
Su
change
Chenxi
clothes?"
would not
Tang
expose
Menji.
her.
At least cover
Captain
this
Lee had
sexy
embarrassed
blush
Mrs.
stammer.
Tang and
Fortunately,
Tang
seeing
Menji
Su
in public
now was
but
the
he had
Su
supported
5
the
years
maybe
later.
I remembered it
If it was
wrong.
the Su
It is
Chenxi
just
of 5
if this
years
got
ago,
out, she would have
everyone
not
would
be
have
the
to
one
ring
who
over
got
for
Su Chenxi.
$100,000
I wanted to
right?
bullying her,
But now she did
after
not
all,
want to.
Lee
For
was
$100,000
imperceptible
was much
sense
more
of
useful
danger
to
on
his
his
family.
face. Mrs. Lee
But
and
his lips
Captain
today
both
is your mother's
frowned a
birthday.
little.
You want to leave?
Su
Didn't you
Chenxi
prepare anything?
the
He shook her
restlessness
head.
in
Hurry
her
up
heart.
and take it
How
out.
could it be a
Captain
random
Lee quickly
pushed
reminded
his hand
him.
away, saying
She
quickly
nodded and
covered
I'm
her
going to
mouth
give Mom a
with
regretting that she had
present
let
was
did not
prepared
expect
by
to
the
be
Su
pushed
Chenxi.
away. Tang Menji
Su
came with her
did not
dowry
dare
and
to
Su
kept
Chenxi
any longer
why
and
did
ran
you
away.
run? She stopped
However,
even
as
closer
soon
to
as
the
she
door
opened the door,
it gave
she
people
saw
more
Lee
room
Cixi
for
looking out the
imagination.
doors with his
Narrowed his
upper
eyes.
body
They had to admit that
not
she
far away.
pushed the door
However,
back
man is
closed
mirror
exactly
quickly
what she
wide
wanted.
muscles and a
Su
handsome
Chenxi
face.
looked nervous,
Deliberately
the
not
old Su
looking
Chenxi. At the moment
Captain
he
Lee
looked
looked
against the wall, she would have directly fought back and
when he
loudly
turned
declared
around,
he
he
suddenly
suddenly
felt
husband
cold
and
and
wife
heavy in his hand,
and we have to fulfill
she
our
pen head and
obligation
pen holder
consciously
were
step
inlaid
back.
with a little diamond.
But however, the
Had
cabinet
pretend
very
short,
elegant
and when
wasn't
she
his
spoke
acting
back,
a little too
Captain
real,
Lee
and she
smiled
fell down.
really? How
You
could
have a
there
good
be
eye.
such a huge
Did you
change in
choose
just
this?
one night?
Su
He
Chenxi
calmly
nodded with a
retracted
blush
his
and said,
gaze and walked
"This
toward the
design
wardrobe.
looks ordinary, but
Whether
in
it was
fact,
real or
it
fake,
is very
wouldn't they know once
exquisite,
they tried.
low-key and
Su
luxurious."
Chenxi had no
I think it
idea
suits
that she had been
Grandpa very
suspected,
well, so I,
full of anticipation, he took out
without
without
batting an eyelid.
When he returned
and two
to the
more
living
wrinkles
room,
appeared on
everyone's
his face.
eyes were on him.
Just a gift.
Trying to make
Why did
herself
you use
look
your uncle's
natural,
name?
she walked
You
forward
lied
in front of so many
generous
people.
posture.
If I didn't know better, I would think that the Lee family's daughter-in-law lacks discipline. Mrs. Tang looked disgusted. Because I know that Grandpa is a very thrifty person. If he knew that I spent so much money on a pen for him, Grandpa would not be happy. So I simply pushed it to Uncle. Anyway, he would not know. She playfully stuck out her tongue and timidly looked up at Captain Lee. Grandpa, you won't be angry, right?
Chapter 17. Captain Li's words reminded all the ladies of the Qipao incident. They all looked at Tang Menjing with a strange look. Tang Menjing clenched her fists and smiled. However, it was a bit forced. As if he had said that carelessly, Captain Li pretended to be displeased and said with a straight face, "Don't do it again. I will accept it this time, but don't cheat your uncle in the future." Okay. Su Qianxi nodded and happened to see a tall and handsome figure walking out of the room. The first thing Li Xiqing saw when he walked out was her beautiful smile. Her slightly immature face was smiling like a flower, as if there was a layer of faint halo around her. Beautiful. That was what Li Xiqing was thinking at the moment. He looked away and walked away. "Let's go." As he said that, he was already walking toward the door. Cold. So cold that it was not like he was facing his new wife. Tang Menjing let out a sigh of relief and felt a bit proud. She looked at Su Qianxi with a bit of provocation. She thought the plan last night was flawless. She just needed to add fuel to the fire, and Su Qianxi would no longer be able to stand straight in front of Li Xiqing. At that time, no matter how much this idiot girl tried to please the old man, it would all be in vain. After all, she was married to Li Xiqing, not Li Sun. Tang Menjing would be the second wife of the Li family sooner or later. Seeing Li Xiqing like this, Captain Li sighed inwardly. It seemed that it would take some time for them to get to know each other better. Su Qianxi was already used to it. She looked at Mrs. Li apologetically and said, "Mom, I'm sorry. Your gift, go." Mrs. Li had a smile on her face. She had changed a lot about Su Qianxi. It seemed that this daughter-in-law was not as bad as she had imagined. Li Xiqing did not take the driver with him. He drove straight to the door and found that Su Qianxi was already waiting for him. Glancing at her, Li Xiqing opened the door and got in. He did not say a word during the whole process. Knowing that he hated her, she did not say anything. In her previous lifetime, she could not hold back her anger because of Tang Menjing in the old house of the Li family. Captain Li did not even go into the hall, so Su Qianxi did not know that Captain Li knew everything. Thinking about it, it should be because of that incident that Captain Li did not ask Li Xiqing to go home with him. In the end, Su Qianxi called the Su family and remembered that she was supposed to go home that day. Because of this incident, her status in the Su family plummeted. Because of this, her grandfather regretted marrying the wrong granddaughter. Because of this, her uncle and aunt oppressed her crazily. Her life was getting worse day by day. After driving for about 10 minutes, she was surprised to find that he did not go directly to the Su family, but slowly stopped on a busy street. "Get out of the car." Li Xiqing was expressionless. Su Qianxi pursed her lips, a little disappointed with this result, but also expected. Even if it was his grandfather's order, he didn't really need to follow it, right? As long as he could deal with his grandfather, everything would be fine. Chapter 18. As soon as she touched the doorknob, the man next to her said again, "I'll give you 20 minutes to change." Su Qianxi was dazed and glanced down at herself. She was wearing her favorite outfit. It was not a famous brand and the quality was only above average, but it was very suitable for her temperament. She did not want to throw it away when she moved, so she brought it with her luggage to the Li family. She did not expect that he would even notice such a detail. "Take it." Li Xiqing's expression was indifferent, and his voice was cold. He had already handed her a black card. Su Qianxi looked at the black card in his hand and was slightly dazed. He actually gave her money? Su Qianxi's heart trembled and she looked up at his face incredulously. Li Xiqing's expression did not change at all, as if the 5 million black card he gave her was a trivial thing. However, it set off a storm in Su Qianxi's heart. She was not shocked by his generosity, but, in her 2 lifetimes, it was the first time he had given her something. Seeing her daze, Li Xiqing frowned unhappily. "Don't think that the Li family will not even buy you a set of clothes when you come to the Su family." Hearing this seemingly explanation, Su Qianxi subconsciously looked out of the car window and saw that it was the entrance of a mall. She immediately felt relieved. Sure enough, it could not be because of her. "Thank you." She took the card and got out of the car. Li Xiqing watched her walk into the mall, and there was a trace of thought in his dark eyes. It seemed that it was really different. Such an attitude did not seem to be fake. So, the Su Qianxi from a while ago was the one who pretended? Which side of her was her true self? Entering her favorite luxury store, Su Qianxi was stared at by all the salespeople as soon as she entered the door. Seeing the clothes Su Qianxi was wearing, the smiles on the salespeople's faces disappeared. Soon, they pouted with disdain and looked at Su Qianxi with disdain, as if she was a garbage collector entering a 5-star hotel. Su Qianxi felt a bit amused. Fortunately, Li Xiqing had reminded her to change.
Otherwise she would be laughed at by her aunt and cousins if she wore this to the Su family. However, he didn't care about the attitude of these salespeople. This was how the world was. People laughed at the poor but not at the prostitutes. Walking around, she was attracted by an exquisite dress in the center of the store. Just as she was about to reach out, a sharp female voice came from not far away. "Ah, don't touch it. That dress is very expensive." Su Chenxi turned her head and saw a salesgirl walking toward her, looking unhappy. "Do you know how much this dress costs? How dare you touch it? What if you break it?" Full of contempt, Su Chenxi asked, "You don't allow people to try on clothes? Those who can afford it can, of course, try it." The salesperson's face was full of disdain. She glanced at the cheap clothes she was wearing and said coldly, "I'm sorry, Mississippi. Please, I won't be seeing you off." Su Chenxi looked at the salespeople and felt a bit confused. She asked, "Is this how you treat your customers?" Chapter 19. Did that mean she could not afford it? Su Chenxi smiled and was about to say something when she suddenly saw two people walking in side by side. What's going on? Did someone who could not afford it come here to force her to buy? The female voice was a bit sarcastic. It was a man and a woman. The man was tall and strong and the woman was elegant and cool. When they walked in, the expression of the salesperson suddenly changed. She greeted them with a smile and said, "Miss Liu, you're here." Su Chenxi also looked over and was slightly surprised. If she remembered correctly, Liu Anan was the daughter of Mrs. Tang's younger brother, which meant she was Tang Minjing's cousin and her biggest rival in high school. Liu Anan's family used to be very poor. Later, when Mrs. Tang became successful, her family rose to fame and became a real nouveau riche. However, the man standing next to Liu Anan was her first love when she was young. His name was Fu Lingbing, the most handsome guy in school. Not only was he handsome, he was also from a very rich family. Seeing Fu Lingbing, Su Chenxi was a bit dazed. She did not expect that she could see her first love again. However, at this moment she had no feelings for him at all. However, she remembered that Liu Anan later married a middle-aged rich businessman and had a son with tens of millions of yuan. She did not expect that the two of them had hooked up. Hearing the salesperson's words, Liu Anan responded condescendingly, as if she was very satisfied with her flattery. Then she looked at Su Chenxi and said in surprise, "Isn't this our campus belle, Su Chenxi? What a coincidence. You're also here to buy clothes?" The salesperson quickly smiled apologetically and said with a fawning expression, "So Miss Liu knows this person?" Liu Anan sneered, "Of course I know him. In high school he went from a bad student to a famous university. He is very famous in our school. Am I right, Lingbing?" Fu Lingbing frowned and looked at Su Chenxi in front of him. She seemed to be different from what he remembered. Su Chenxi had a straight nose, thin eyebrows and big eyes. Her clean and soft black hair was draped over her shoulders. Her hairstyle was also very simple. Her long black hair was straight in the middle, which made her look even more delicate. Su Chenxi was the campus belle when she was in high school. At that time she was a typical rebellious girl. Her clothes and hairstyle were all non-mainstream. Now that she had changed those styles, she was even more slim and graceful, making people unable to take their eyes off her. The salesperson heard Liu Anan's words and looked even more impatient. She waved at Su Chenxi and said, "Go. If you don't go, I will hire security." She sneered and took out her wallet from her bag. A black card quickly appeared in her hand. "Is this card enough?" Seeing this black card, the salesperson, who had wanted to make a few sarcastic remarks, immediately became silent. Grabbing the black card from Su Chenxi's hand, he took a closer look and exclaimed, "It's real." This black card had at least 5 million yuan in it. Su Chenxi saw her look of surprise and disbelief. She looked at the dress that she liked at first sight and said, "Let me try that dress." The salesperson was obviously unwilling, but she still turned around to retrieve the dress and handed it over with both hands. She took it and went into the fitting room. Chapter 20. The shop assistant had a look of understanding on her face and flattered, "So she's a mistress. No wonder. I was wondering how she could have this kind of card with her temperament and dressing." Exactly. This woman has been a slut since she was in high school. Everyone said that she had an affair with the principal. Otherwise, how could she have been admitted to a prestigious university? Liu Anan was very satisfied with her cooperation. The sound of the door opening came from the fitting room. Su Chenxi walked out of it and suddenly felt refreshed. Although Su Chenxi was beautiful, she looked like a little girl next door, young and energetic but ordinary. Now Su Chenxi had changed into a sleeveless dress from a famous brand. The pink color made her skin look white and delicate. Her temperament suddenly changed and she was a metamorphosed socialite. Women were born beautiful and Su Qianxi was no exception. Looking at herself in the mirror with satisfaction, she smiled. Those salespeople felt like their eyeballs were about to pop out. It was too suitable. This dress seemed to be tailor-made for her. Not only the size but even the temperament was very suitable. It was the first time they had seen someone wear this dress so well. Even Fu Lingbing, who was used to seeing beauties, was stunned for a moment. Lu Ainin saw his reaction and felt jealous. She sneered and said, "Clothes make a man. A pheasant can become a peacock with good clothes. However, a pheasant will always be a pheasant. No matter how much she dresses up, she will never become a phoenix." Su Qianxi suddenly frowned and looked at a salesperson saying, "You really serve everyone here. Such a strong smell. Don't you think about driving her away?" Lu Ainin's face darkened. She yelled, "You are the one who should leave." Su Qianxi ignored her, took her black card and went to the cashier. Check. The salesperson was overjoyed. She did not expect to sell a dress so easily. She hurried to the cashier, but then she saw the small bag in Su Qianxi's hand. There was no logo on it and it was so low-key that she almost did not recognize it. She exclaimed, "This is the new limited edition of Dior's runway show this year." At the same time, another salesperson also recognized it. Her pupils contracted. She said in a daze, "Is it the one that only has 10 in the world?" That surprised Lu Ainin and Fu Lingbing as well. There were only 10 in the world and Su Qianxi had one in her hand. What kind of identity was that? That was not something that could be done with money. The faces of those salespeople were very interesting. Who would have thought that she actually had such a huge black card and such a hard-to-get bag when she was dressed so shabbily? These facts that were placed in front of them were like slaps on their faces. The salesperson who had just ridiculed her blushed and quietly walked over to help her swipe her card. Chapter 21. Su Qianxi glanced at her coldly and immediately saw her jealous face. Curling her lips, she sneered, "Low quality, full of filth. I really don't want to admit that you were my classmate back then." Su Qianxi rolled her eyes with some arrogance and contempt. Su Qianxi was a bit smaller than Lu Ainin, but at this moment she gave Lu Ainin an inexplicable sense of oppression. It had nothing to do with their height or looks. The difference in aura alone was enough to crush Lu Ainin into the dust. Fu Lingbing couldn't help but look at Su Qianxi again. At this moment Su Qianxi was elegant, and elegant. Compared to when she was in high school, she was a completely different person. In front of her, Lu Ainin was like an ugly duckling, while Su Qianxi was a high and mighty swan. Such a huge difference made Lu Ainin even angrier. Clenching her fists, she almost yelled, "I do not want to admit that someone who is willing to sleep with an old man who is older than your father is my high school classmate." Enough. Fu Lingbing stopped her in time. "You are going too far." Others might not know, but he was very clear that the Fu family was also a famous family. However, his sister had been eyeing that bag for more than half a year and had finally sold it, but she had not gotten one. Su Qianxi could actually get one and hold it in her hand, which meant that the person behind her was definitely not simple. In addition, Su Qianxi's temperament was completely different from before. No matter who she was, Su Qianxi was not someone they could afford to offend. However, Lu Ainin did not know what Fu Lingbing was trying to do. Throwing off his hand, she yelled, "Too far? Don't tell me your heart aches for her? Seeing that she has become so beautiful and awesome, are you planning to chase after her and be together with her?" Fu Lingbing felt extremely embarrassed. He had never been so embarrassed in his life. Annoyed, he said, "Are you done? Let's go. This is too embarrassing." Su Qianxi sneered and decided to ignore her. Competing with this kind of person was simply degrading. Han Sen quickly swiped his card and signed. When he was ready to leave, Lu Ainin shouted again, "You be asterisk t. Back then you slept with the principal in exchange for a recommendation. Today you sleep with the old man to buy luxury goods. You really can't change your ways." More and more people came to watch and all eyes were on her. However, Su Qianxi did not panic at all, only indifference and anger. "Lu Ainin, do you know how many years you will be sentenced for defamation?" Seeing that Su Qianxi finally responded to her, Lu Ainin screamed proudly, "Slander? Framing? Which one of my words is false? Back then, you were so poor that you had to borrow money for your school fees. How could you have the money to buy luxury goods? You're just a slacker. If you relied on your own abilities, how could you possibly graduate?" Hearing Lu Ainin's words, everyone became curious. Such an explosive scene was something that only happened once in 100 years in this high-class shopping mall. Seeing more and more people gathered, Lu Ainin's voice became louder and louder. "You were admitted to a prestigious university,
but I failed the college entrance exam. Everyone knows that I got full marks in all my subjects. You must have tricked the principal and changed my grades. Su Qinxi was speechless. She was indeed a slacker. But later, under the coercion and temptation of the Su family, he worked hard and stayed up all night for more than a month in the third year of high school. In the end, he collapsed and fell ill after the college entrance examination. He still didn't meet the requirements of the Su family to get into the ideal major, so he had to settle for the second best and chose the business management major of Kingstown University. Why did Lu Anan say that she had gotten it through illegal means? More and more people were watching. Some of them had recorded the scene and posted it on Weibo. Su Qinxi was not nervous at all. Looking at Lu Anan, she said frankly, "Where is the evidence? Since you are so sure, show me the evidence. I would like to see how I tricked the principal without telling myself." "Evidence? Do I need evidence?" Lu Anan sneered. "The fact that a slacker like you could get into a prestigious university is the best evidence." "Oh really?" Chapter 22. "Oh, is that so?" A man's voice passed through the layers of sound waves, like a bass cello, deep and magnetic, followed closely by the steady sound of leather shoes. A tall figure came with his back to the light. He was tall and straight, imposing and cold. His eyes glanced at Lu Anan and immediately fell on Su Qinxi. Seeing her new outfit, there was a glimmer of light in his eyes, but it was gone in a flash. "President Li." "Hello, President Li." The salespeople were originally watching the commotion, but when they saw the tall and straight figure, they all stood up one after another and their eyes clearly lit up. There was admiration, passion, and desire in their eyes. This was a godlike man. As the youngest eligible bachelor in Kingstown, Li Xiqing had always kept a low profile. He didn't expect that this busy man would personally come to the small shopping mall under his name. It really made everyone feel flattered. The sarcasm on Lu Anan's face suddenly disappeared, and her eyes were full of love. "President Li, President Li." Fu Lungbing looked at Li Xiqing, who was wearing casual clothes today, with admiration in his eyes. The passion in his eyes was obvious. "Yes," Li Xiqing responded quietly and looked at his watch. His lips moved and his face was cold. 20 minutes have passed. When he spoke, he was facing Su Qinxi. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. The president, who was usually so cold, was talking to this woman. Lu Anan was dazed and unwilling. She walked up to Li Xiqing and said, "President Li, do you know this woman?" Li Xiqing glanced at her coldly. "This woman's character is very bad. I advise you to stay away from her. This kind of woman knew how to use her body to exchange for education in high school. Now she's even worse. I don't know who's keeping her. Xioli, you and my cousin are childhood friends. I don't want you to be cheated by her." Seeing Lu Anan warning Li Xiqing so seriously, Su Qinxi suddenly felt it was ridiculous. If she knew that the woman she was talking about was Li Xiqing's wife, how would she react? Must be very exciting. Thinking of Lu Anan's expression, Su Qinxi curled her lips, which made Lu Anan even angrier. "Su Qinxi, how dare you smile? You're the one who's embarrassed now. Why don't I have the face to smile?" Su Qinxi even more presumptuously raised her eyebrows and chuckled. Her little face, without any makeup, actually had an indescribable temptation. Li Xiqing suddenly felt his throat tighten, thinking of this morning when she stubbornly stared at him naked. His mouth felt dry. "Hey, you've lost all your face, haven't you? The one who's been exposed in public is you, not me." "Oh really?" She seemed to be in a good mood. "Then take it that way." Lu Anan was pissed off. His nonchalance made her even angrier. "You." Lu Anan wanted to say something but was interrupted. "Tang Minjing is your cousin?" Li Xiqing's voice was low and magnetic, with an indescribable charm. All the women who heard it felt their hearts beat faster. Hearing him talking to her, Lu Anan was overjoyed. Chapter 23. Lu Anan blushed and quickly nodded. "Yes. Brother Li, we met at your birthday party last year. I was wearing..." She changed the way she addressed Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing's eyes flashed with impatience as he said, "Didn't she tell you that I'm married?" Li Xiqing's eyes flashed with impatience. Lu Anan was dazed and nodded. It was no secret that Li Xiqing was married. However, the wedding was very low-key. The media did not even know who his partner was. Why did he suddenly mention it? Lu Anan could not understand this man. However, such a mysterious man was the most attractive to women. Lu Anan was even more excited. Lu Anan stared at him without any hesitation. This kind of gaze was so blatant that it was disgusting. Li Xiqing was already numb to this kind of look. However, he suddenly remembered that a few days ago Su Qianxi had looked at him the same way. Only today, he finally knew what was different about her. Playing hard to get? Gazing at Su Qianxi, Li Xiqing quickly looked away. So, I do not think it is a wise choice to slander my wife in front of me. His expression was calm, as if he was narrating something that couldn't be more normal. However, his words stirred up a storm in everyone's hearts. Among them, Lu Anan was the most shocked. She exclaimed out of reflex, "How is it possible? She's your wife." Fu Lingbing was also shocked, looking at Su Qianxi incredulously. What was the Li family? The top family in Kingstown. Among the three brothers of the Li family, only Li Xiqing was in business. But which of the people who came from the Li clan was not a dragon or phoenix among men? Fu Lingbing knew how high the threshold was for such a family. Could Su Qianxi marry into the Li family? Not only Lu Anan, even Fu Lingbing could not believe it. However, Li Xiqing had admitted it himself. What? She is the president's wife? One of the salespeople could not believe it, leaning against the cabinet. The woman who was dressed so simply was the wife of the big boss of the mall? It's Mrs. Li. One of the onlookers suddenly sighed. I knew it. That aura was extraordinary. She even sold her body to sleep with him? A woman's jealousy is really scary. That's right. He's so aggressive. I thought it was real. Tiske, there are all kinds of birds in a big forest. But Mrs. Li is so beautiful. She and President Li are a match made in heaven. That's right, but is the man beside that woman the son of Fu's enterprise? It's true. Could that woman be his girlfriend? It can't be, right? His eyesight is that bad. The discussion was getting louder and louder. Fu Lingbing's face was already red, so he quietly stayed away from Lu Anan. Chapter 24. What's going on? I heard someone is making trouble here. A few men in uniform walked in. Su Qianxi glanced at them coldly, curled her lips and said, Yes, police. Someone is maliciously slandering me. Maliciously slandering? They braved such hot weather to come here just for such a small matter? However, when she saw Li Xiqing, her impatient expression suddenly changed. She called, Mr. Li. Seeing the police, Lu Anan was dazed and immediately panicked. Su Qianxi, you know very well whether I am slandering you or not. Which part of what I said was not true? You shameless woman, how dare you call the police? Well, go and tell the police. Su Qianxi's voice was gentle and her face was calm. However, in her dark eyes, there was a hint of coldness. At that moment, her aura was so strong that it was eye-catching. I don't have time to waste with you anymore. How dare you call the police? I am a relative of the Tang family. Brother Li, isn't my cousin your childhood sweetheart? How could you send her cousin to the police station? Lu Anan looked at Li Xiqing as if he was her last straw, hoping that he would stop Su Qianxi. After all, Tang Menjing had grown up with him. Everyone said that he and Tang Menjing were a match made in heaven, a handsome man and a beautiful woman, childhood sweethearts. The Tang family and the Lu family all thought that Li Xiqing would marry Tang Menjing. Now, even if they were not husband and wife, they would at least care about their relationship, right? However, she clearly underestimated how heartless Li Xiqing could be. That tall and straight figure that seemed to be surrounded by thousands of rays of light didn't seem to hear her at all. He looked up at his watch and urged, 1 o'clock. She had said so much, but there was no response. Lu Anan was not willing to give up and continued, Brother Li, even if you do not respect my cousin, at least respect the Tang family. I am a cousin of the Tang family after all. Su Qianxi felt a bit sympathetic. This sentence really touched Li Xiqing's sore spot. Are you threatening me? Li Xiqing looked up and stared at Lu Anan with his eagle-like eyes. Lu Anan felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on her. She panicked and said, No, did Director Sun pay you to watch the show? Li Xiqing's voice was so cold that people couldn't help shivering. The policemen immediately took out their handcuffs and arrested Lu Anan. What's your relationship with the suspect? A police officer looked at Fu Lingbing. No, we're fine. Fu Lingbing had lost all his face today with such a big-breasted but brainless girlfriend. In addition, Lu Anan had not only offended Su Qianxi, but also the man behind her. He couldn't afford to provoke such an existence, even if his entire Fu family were to be sacrificed. The only thing he could do now was to distance himself from Lu Anan, the idiot. However, Lu Anan sneered and screamed, He is my boyfriend. He was the one who told me everything I just said. Do you want to wash your hands clean? No way. They were in the same boat. If they were to die, they would die together. Chapter 25. Too much? Who is the one who is too much?
Fu Lingbing, you coward. He did not, Su Qianxi said. You asked for it and you still have to find a scapegoat. Lu Anan, you are such a bad person. Fu Lingbing was dazed, not expecting Su Qianxi to speak up for him. He felt grateful, but at the same time he was proud of his charm. It turned out that Su Qianxi still liked him. That was right. First love was not something that could be easily forgotten. Feeling happy, Fu Lingbing looked at Su Qianxi in a different way. A policeman took a pen and wrote something down. He looked up and said, I'll have to trouble you to come with us and take a statement. Fu Lingbing nodded. It was good that he was not an accomplice. Get the surveillance video as evidence. As for the witness, you can handle it, right? Su Qianxi looked at the salesperson. No problem, absolutely no problem. Mrs. Li, rest assured. We can all testify for you. This woman is slandering you. Seeing the change of events, Lu Anan screamed like crazy, Su Qianxi, my cousin will not let you go for what you did to me today. The Tang family will not let you go either. Okay. Su Qianxi's eyes darkened and she stood straight. Then I will wait and see. It was just Lu Anan. Sending her to the police station was not only for revenge, but also to slap Tang Menjing in the face. She was just Tang Menjing's cousin. Su Qianxi had not only messed with her but also made it worse. What happened today was her formal declaration of war against Tang Menjing. Offending Li Xiqing, Lu Anan's life was over. Lu Anan was soon taken away and the crowd dispersed. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi walked out of the mall one after the other, speechless. Wait, Su Qianxi. It was Fu Lingbing's voice. Su Qianxi turned her head and saw Fu Lingbing running up to her. Seeing her pretty face, he smiled brightly. Su Qianxi, it's been a long time. I didn't expect you to be married. Su Qianxi's eyes lit up. I did not expect you to be with Lu Anan, Han Sen said sarcastically. Fu Lingbing's face was a little awkward, but he didn't say much and went straight to the point. There will be a high school reunion on the 8th of next month. You should come too. I couldn't find you before, but I've made up for it now. High school reunion? Su Qianxi remembered that in her previous lifetime, she had also participated. The venue was in a 6-star hotel, but she was dragged there by her so-called good friend. After she went there, she was targeted by Lu Anan. She was short-tempered. Under the conspiracy of Lu Anan and Tang Menjing, it was said that she had sold her body to get a degree, that she was a sugar daddy, and that she had done plastic surgery to get a higher position. Chapter 26. However, he did not say a word. It was as if he was facing a complete stranger. Indifferent and cold. No one knew that she was the wife of the Li family. And no one believed that she had been slandered. After that party, the black hat had followed her for the rest of her life, and her reputation had been ruined for the rest of her life. Because of that, she hated Tang Menjing, but she had never hated Li Xiqing. Thinking about it now, she realized that this man was extremely heartless. Thinking of this, the lingering affection she had for him disappeared without a trace. Such a man was not someone she could control. Instead of falling for him like a fool, she might as well get away. However, she did not expect that Fu Lingbing, the host of the reunion, would invite her in person. Looking at her indifferent expression, Fu Lingbing could not understand her. He asked carefully, Su Qianxi? She looked up and curled her lips. Okay, I will be there. Fu Lingbing was overjoyed. That's settled then. I'll contact you when the time comes. As he spoke, he did not forget to look at the tall figure standing beside her. Su Qianxi was nothing. The man next to her was the one Fu Lingbing wanted. Mr. Li, if you have time, would you like to join us? Fu Lingbing couldn't help feeling nervous. Li Xiqing had a strange temper and he was afraid that he would refuse. The man looked indifferent and responded, okay. Fu Lingbing let out a sigh of relief and was overjoyed. There was no refusal, which meant there was hope. He had to climb up this tree. Back in the car, Li Xiqing took out a cigarette from the drawer, lit it up and slowly smoked. White smoke came out of her red lips, adding a layer of mystery to Li Xiqing's already handsome face. His movements were as elegant as a character in a painting. However, Su Qianxi knew that he was thinking about something. Li Xiqing did not smoke easily, but whenever he encountered something he could not understand, he would light a cigarette and slowly sort it out. However, what was he thinking about? Su Qianxi had a feeling that maybe it had something to do with her. However, on second thought, she felt that she was overthinking. With a self-deprecating smile, she looked up and found that Li Xiqing was looking at her. His eyes were indescribably deep. Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat. Feeling a bit scared, she asked uncertainly, "What's wrong?" Li Xiqing did not speak, but put the cigarette in his hand and slowly leaned toward Su Qianxi. Su Chenxi felt even more nervous and subconsciously shrank back. Staring at her face, he did not speak, but his eyes slowly moved from her eyes to her lips. But her mind seemed to be bombarded by something, and her face suddenly blushed. She couldn't help thinking of a sentence. When a man looked at a woman's lips, there was only one purpose, and that was to kiss her. Chapter 27. Why? A magnetic voice rang in her ear. If the voice could make her ears pregnant, she felt she needed an abortion right now. But why? Su Chenxi looked up and saw his cold and stunning face. You are not smiling. Should she be smiling? Su Chenxi was confused, but before she could figure it out, he had already straightened up and looked down at the cigarette between his fingers. The ash was already very long. Flicking it slightly, Li Xiqing took another puff, his expression unreadable. Exhaling the white smoke, Su Chenxi felt even more confused. This man. Why was he always so mysterious? Suddenly, Su Chenxi thought of her previous life. When she first married him, she felt that she was the luckiest woman in the world. There was no woman in Kingstown who did not fall for him, and she could be so close to him and become his wife. Because of this mentality, whenever she approached him, her lips would unconsciously curl up. A happy smile, a joyful smile, and a loving smile. However, now she no longer loved him, so naturally she could not smile. Her heart skipped a beat, and she suddenly realized that since she was reborn, she seemed to have not disguised herself at all. It took her 5 years to go from being willful and naive to being mature. In those 5 years she had suffered a lot and fallen into many traps before she settled down. Now she had become like this overnight, which was indeed suspicious. When Su Chenxi was thinking about how to explain, he had started the car and slowly headed for the Su family. The Su family had been waiting for a long time. Sitting on the sofa, Su Shana was very impatient, covering her growling stomach. She pouted at the middle-aged man opposite her and said, "Dad, Su Chenxi, that loser, should not be coming. With her personality, if she wanted to come, she would have come long ago. She can't wait that long. Shall we eat first?" Su Jinghua looked at the time. It was already 1:30 in the afternoon, long past dinner time. His gloomy face seemed to be covered with a layer of haze. He said to his wife, "Call and ask." Mrs. Su nodded and was about to dial when the doorbell rang. Susanna immediately went to open the door and saw the tall man standing at the door. Her eyes lit up and she smiled sweetly. "Mr. Li, you're finally here." This was not the first time she had seen this man, but she was amazed every time she saw him. This man was like the bright moon in the sky, cold and noble, untouchable. There wasn't a single woman in Kingstown who didn't fall for him. But, cousin. Su Chenxi's figure came from Li Xiqing's side. The smile on Susanna's face froze and she felt jealous. However, no matter how much she hated Su Chenxi, Susanna knew what to do. She avoided her and let her in. "Uncle Aunt." Su Chenxi entered the door and greeted him. Her actions were graceful and her smile was sweet and appropriate. Her every move was extremely dignified. Standing next to Li Xiqing, she looked indescribably harmonious and beautiful.
Chapter 28. Sure enough, even AB*TCH would be different when she found someone powerful. Chapter
However,
29.
why did she, the legitimate daughter of the Su
Su
family,
did not give
have
them
to
any
marry
hope.
this illegitimate
He
daughter?
doesn't want to touch
It
me.
was so unfair.
Hearing that,
Su
Mrs. Su
was a
acted
bit
as if
anxious.
he did not hear her
He
greeting
doesn't
him.
want to touch you.
He stood up
Can't
and
you
walked
do
over to
something?
Li Xiqing with a bright
What can
smile.
I do?
Do you think I
you are
can
here?
force myself on
Come
him?
have a seat.
Well,
Have you eaten?
Mrs. Su was also a bit
Oh,
helpless.
That's great.
Anyway,
We
don't
happen to be a
embarrass our
bit late
family.
today.
Why
Let's
do you
eat
think
together.
Captain Li wants you to
Su
marry him?
Jingwa smiled,
It's
trying
because
to
your
please
mother
Li
saved
Xiqing.
his life when she was
Okay.
young. Li Xiqing
Otherwise,
was a
do you
man of
think you
few
could be
words,
where
so
you
he
are
just
today?
responded.
In
However,
the end,
Su
we're the
Jingwa's
ones who
face
pulled
was a
you
little
back from the
awkward and he
slums.
forced a smile.
That's why you're able to
At that
rise to
time,
the top.
Susanna came over
Now
with
that
a
you're
small
successful,
tray.
don't forget
She
to take
smiled
care of
shyly
us.
and said,
At
least
least
find
have
your
some
cousin
coffee.
a relative of the Li
Mrs. Su
family.
also smiled
I
and
heard
said,
that Mr. Li
knowing
has a
that you
younger
like
brother
coffee,
who is
Nana
unmarried.
went to learn how to make
Find
it.
a way to get
Can
his
you help her
itinerary.
see if she can make it?
Even if there is
Susanna
no
looked at
itinerary,
him
the
expectantly,
basic information
and
is
Su
fine.
Jingwa and his wife
Ask your
also
cousin to
smiled
visit
at
the
Li
Li
Xiqing.
family often.
However,
Maybe
Li
she can
Xiqing's
meet him.
eyes fell on the
I'm
tall
talking
figure
to
on
you.
the side.
Do you hear me?
Why are you standing
Mrs.
there?
Su said a lot,
Come
and
and sit
Su
down.
Qianxi nodded
As
Li
Li Xiqing
Xiqing
said that,
Seeing
seeing
her
her
like
like
that,
noticed
Susanna
that Su
snorted
Qianxi was
angrily
still
and
standing
said,
on the side
Dad,
without
you should
anyone
tell
greeting
Captain
her.
Li that I am my
Su
aunt's
Jingwa
daughter.
looked embarrassed and
If I
coughed.
marry him, I will not
Su
be
Qianxi,
afraid of
you are in
being
your own
embarrassed.
home. Why are you
Oh,
acting
it seems
so
that you really
strange?
want to marry
If
him.
I didn't know better,
How about
I
I
would think that
divorce
you are
him
the
and you
guest.
live with him?
You are
Su
Mrs. Li
Qianxi
now.
looked indifferent,
How can you not
unable
know
to
the
tell
rules?
if she was serious
Come and
or
sit
not.
down.
By the way,
Mrs.
do
Su
a
also
DNA
looked
test
annoyed.
and tell them that you are
She had already
Suhan's daughter
expected
and I
this.
was just picked up.
For the Su family,
Isn't that
she would
better?
always be dust.
Susanna's
and Li
eyes lit
Xiqing
up
was
at
the
his
honorable
half-joking
one.
words. Without Li
Even
Xiqing,
Mrs.
she
Su
would
looked
be
a bit
nothing.
touched.
She walked
Seeing
over
this,
slowly
Su
and sat
Qianxi
down
sneered
next to Li
inwardly.
Xiqing.
In her
However,
previous
she
lifetime,
deliberately
they had
found
done
a
this
seat
to
far
her.
away from him,
They would
at
fake
least
a
1
DNA
meter
test
away.
and send it to
Based
the Li
on what
family
she
to
knew
tell
about
the world
Susanna,
that she was
she
actually
would not
picked up
miss
and
this
that
opportunity.
Suhan's daughter was actually
Sure
Susanna.
enough, Susanna
Because
saw
they
the
could not
empty
have
seat
children,
between them
they
and had an
adopted their sister's
indescribable look
daughter.
in her eyes.
The purpose was to
Susanna
let
picked
Susanna
up the
marry
coffee
into
on
the
the
table
table
and
and
walk
walked
toward
Li
him,
Xiqing.
saying,
At
Mr.
that
Li,
time,
try
this
the
matter
coffee
was
I
very
made.
sensational.
I've been learning
and
to make
people
it for a
around
while.
heard that the
Can you
daughter-in-law
tell me
of
if
the
it's
Li
good
family
enough?
was of unknown
As he
origin.
spoke, he had
However,
already
the Li
sat down
family
in the
could
middle
not
of
afford
them.
to lose
Li
face.
Xiqing
They
frowned as if
created
he
a
had
fake
touched a
identity
virus.
for Su Qianxi
He
and
stood
let
up
her go.
abruptly the moment
Captain
she
Li
sat
did
down.
not intend to
Su
divorce Su
Jingwa was
Qianxi at
startled
all.
by his sudden
Su
movement and
Jingwa's
stared
family's
blankly
wishful
at him.
thinking fell through,
Bathroom?
and because of this,
I'll
the
take
Su
you there.
family sought death.
Susanna said
Under the
immediately
revenge
and
of
was
the Li
about to
family,
stand
the
up.
Su family quickly
However,
went
he was
bankrupt.
immediately stopped by
Now
Su
that this
Jingwa.
matter was brought up,
Unruly.
there was more or less
Su
a hint of
Jingwa looked
mockery.
at Su Qianxi
He
and
didn't
said
expect that this
meaningfully,
family
"You
would
go."
really have this idea
She did not
after he
intend to
mentioned
get
it.
up.
Pointing,
Are you willing
she
to
said,
divorce
"Go
him?"
straight and turn
Susanna
right."
found it hard to
He
believe.
strode away and soon
How is that
disappeared
possible?
around the corner.
Haven't you been
Once
bragging
the big
about your
shots
marriage
left,
with
the
Li
small
Xiqing?
shots could no
When
longer
did I
hold
show
themselves
off?
back.
She asked.
How have you been
Susanna
at the Li
choked and
family
was
these
speechless.
days?
Yes,
Today
Su
is
Qianxi
Mrs.
did not
Li's
show off.
birthday.
Her
Did you give her
silence
the
was
present
enough to
I
make
prepared?
everyone crazy jealous.
Mrs. Su asked.
He and I
Yes.
will not be together for too long. Divorce is only a matter of time. Her tone was calm as if she was talking about something trivial. Hearing her words, Su Jingwa frowned, seeming to be wondering if she was telling the truth. Chapter 30. Isn't that what you want? Su Qianxi clearly noticed the change in Mrs. Su's expression. She had guessed something but pretended not to know. Curling her lips, she said sarcastically, I will divorce Li Xiqing, marry my cousin to him, and lie that she is my mother's biological daughter. I will use my mother to save Grandpa's life to break into the Li family and take the Li family's property. Such a plan is perfect, isn't it? The more Su Jingwa listened, the more he felt it was feasible. However, he vaguely felt something was wrong. Turning around, he saw his wife winking at him. Su Jingwa had a bad feeling. Looking up, his expression changed dramatically. He slammed the table and said, What are you talking about? How can you do such a thing? As he shouted, Su Jingwa's face had become pale, staring behind Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi turned her head and seemed to be scared. She quickly turned her head back as if she had done something wrong. However, her heart was as clear as a mirror. She had already known that Li Xiqing was behind her. She had said those words on purpose. Wasn't that what they wanted to do? She was just saying it in advance. After all, Su Qianxi had saved their family. After all, they had ended up bankrupt and ended up living on the streets, pitiful. However, Su Jingwa's family did not know that they hated Su Qianxi to the core. Su Jingwa complained inwardly. When he was about to explain, a maid came up and said, Sir, madam, the food is ready. It's ready to be served. Hearing Hearing that, Su Jinghua quickly said, "Finally, let's eat." "Let's go eat." Was he sure he could still eat? Su Qianxi suddenly felt like laughing. Her uncle was really hypocritical, extremely hypocritical. However, Li Xiqing clearly saw the gloat in her eyes. He immediately understood something, but he did not say it. Looking indifferent, he walked to the table under Su Jinghua's invitation. During the meal, except for Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing, the rest of the people ate nervously. Su Jinghua greeted them, but his heart was also in his throat. He had no idea how much Li Xiqing had heard. If he had only heard what Su Qianxi said, he could still say that it was her side of the story. But if he heard what the family said, then the matter could be big or small. Su Jinghua's heart was perturbed. The meal felt like a century. After more than half an hour, he finally put down his chopsticks. Su Jinghua heaved a sigh of relief and quickly put down his chopsticks, ready to send the guest off at any time. However, a certain someone was not very cooperative. Su Qianxi slowly held her chopsticks and picked up some food on the table. Her leisurely manner was incompatible with the current atmosphere. Su Jinghua cursed his niece to death in his heart. Didn't she know that because of her words just now, the whole family was unhappy? However, they did not know that what Su Qianxi wanted was to make them unhappy. Susanna couldn't stand it anymore and urged, "Are you done? Mr. Li has already finished. You're such a drag." Su Qianxi glanced at her and said in a low voice, "But I'm not full yet." Chapter 31. Nana. Mrs. Su immediately stopped her. Susanna was not convinced, but when she saw Li Xiqing, she swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue. When Su Qianxi finished eating, it was more than 10 minutes later. After eating, they sat down again. The Su family chatted with each other, but Su Qianxi did not say a word about leaving. In the end, it was Li Xiqing who proposed to leave first. The Su family felt like they had been pardoned. They pretended to ask him to stay and politely sent him away. When she left, Su Qianxi could feel the murderous eyes of the Su family behind her, but she felt indescribably good. When she walked out of the house, she stopped and said, "Mr. Li." Li Xiqing raised an eyebrow and looked at her. "I still have something to do. You go back first. I will take a taxi later." "Okay," Li Xiqing responded and walked away. Su Qianxi saw him disappear around the corner and walked to the only pharmacy near the Su family's house. Entering the pharmacy, she bought an emergency contraceptive pill and took it before she left. The clerk threw away the paper cup she had used. When she looked up, there were a few $100 bills in front of her. She was taken aback for a moment before she raised her head and saw a handsome and flawless face. What pill did the girl take? The clerk was dazed. Looking at the bills, she immediately realized and looked at the box that had not been thrown away. Li Xiqing saw the words on the box and his eyes became darker. His thin red lips were pressed into a line. Turning around, he was silent. The shop assistant stared at his back in a daze, then silently put away the bills on the table. She did not say anything. When Su Qianxi got home, Li Xiqing was not back yet. Walking in, she saw Tang Menjing playing cards with Mrs. Li. Lost. Mrs. Li was obviously very lucky. She pushed the cards down and smiled very happily. "I'm done. Shuhua always wins. I've lost so much today." Mrs. Wang was a bit upset. Qin Shuhua was Mrs. Li's name. Hearing Mrs. Wang's resentful words, Qin Shuhua smiled happily. "Don't be like that. Let's play a little more." "I don't want to play anymore unless you want someone else. Here, your daughter-in-law is back." This successfully diverted the attention back to Su Qianxi. She stopped and walked over, greeting them one by one. "Mom, Auntie Li, Auntie Wang. You came back just in time. Help your mother-in-law play a few rounds?" "I don't think so. I don't know how," she said. When Mrs. Wang heard this, she was elated. "That's good. Let your mother-in-law teach you. Come and sit down. Let your daughter-in-law do the calligraphy." Qin Shuhua had indeed won too much that day. Being asked to do so, she was too embarrassed to continue. She stood up and said, "You do it." Su Qianxi had to sit down and Qin Shuhua took a chair and sat down watching her play. Su Qianxi said she wouldn't and that meant it. Chapter 32. When Su Qianxi said she would not, she really would not. In her previous lifetime she had been married to the Li family for 5 years, but Mrs. Li had never liked her, let alone asked her to play mahjong with her. This was the first time she had been asked to play mahjong. After a few rounds, Su Qianxi lost miserably. Qin Shuhua could not watch it anymore. She got up and said she was tired. She went back to her room and asked Tang Menjing to teach her. Tang Menjing replaced Qin Shuhua to help Su Qianxi, which made Su Qianxi feel uncomfortable. Sure enough, under Tang Menjing's guidance, in less than 2 rounds, Qin Shuhua lost all the money she had won today. Feeling guilty, Su Qianxi took out her own money to top it up. Mrs. Wang was very happy, but she suddenly felt something strange in her stomach. "Ouch, my stomach hurts. Tang Menjing, come and help me. I need to go to the bathroom." After Tang Minjing sat down, she lost 2 rounds in a row. Why is Tang Minjing's luck so good? She won all the big cards. Fortunately, they were all Su Qianxi's cards. Su Qianxi lost a lot, right? I saw you just took money out of your pocket. Su Qianxi felt embarrassed. When she was thinking about whether she should tell them to stop playing, she heard Tang Minjing say, "It's okay. The Li family is rich and can afford to lose. Right, Su Qianxi?" It seemed to be an unintentional sentence, but it put Su Qianxi in a dilemma. She was now the daughter-in-law of the Li family, representing the face of the Li family. The Li family could lose money but not face. If she said that she would stop playing at this time, wouldn't it mean that the Li family could not afford to lose? Su Qianxi felt a bit embarrassed, but she was too embarrassed to say that. She had to bite the bullet and say, "It's okay." That's good. That's good. The other women wanted her to say that. Let's continue. After losing so much money, Su Qianxi had almost figured out the basic rules. However, after reshuffling the cards, she still did not know what to do. When Su Qianxi was hesitating which card to play, she heard a deep, magnetic voice behind her. Lost. Su Qianxi was dazed, looked down at the cards and put them down. She could not understand any of them, only feeling confused. Lost? Where is it burnt? At this moment, a slender and fair hand suddenly stretched out from behind. This hand was fair and strong with distinct knuckles, slender and neat. Chapter 33. Her breathing seemed to slow down at that moment and her face was blushing. Long, slender fingers that were as fair as jade quickly rearranged the tiles in front of her. A melodious voice traveled into her ears, "Touch yourself, 13 ones." Li Xiqing pushed the cards over and everyone looked over. Mrs. Li looked surprised. I was wondering why Su Qianxi was so unlucky. It turns out that she was waiting for a big move. Wow, it's so different when the husband is here. He won as soon as he came, another lady said. Husband? The familiar and distant address made Su Qianxi dazed for a moment. But soon she stared at the cards in front of her. Did I win? Yes, Li Xiqing responded quietly and saw Su Qianxi's surprised profile. Unlike Tang Minjing, Su Qianxi's face was very soft, and her skin was as smooth as porcelain. A pair of dark and bright eyes were embedded in them, sparkling with a smile. So cute. Seeing Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi's posture, Tang Minjing was crazy with jealousy. Brother Xiqing, you are back. Tang Minjing smiled like a flower, bright and beautiful. However, Li Xiqing did not seem to hear it. He bent down slightly, picked up a mahjong tile and whispered, 13-1 is the hardest to draw. You are very lucky. Su Qianxi was even more surprised. Really? I'm very lucky? However, she quickly thought of the money in the drawer that she had lost. But I have lost all of it. How much did you lose? Su Qianxi blushed and whispered, tens of thousands. All the money in her mother-in-law's drawer added up to nearly 80,000 yuan, and the cash she had taken out of her purse. Well, tens of thousands was a conservative estimate. Li Xiqing just said quietly, win it back. If Li Xiqing said he would win it back, then he could really win it back. Shuffling again and picking up the cards, Su Qianxi found that it was not her bad luck, but that she did not know how to play. Looking at his hands arranging the cards in front of her, his long fingers were like a beautiful painting, which made her heart skip a beat. His hot breath was right next to her ear, so close, so hot. Su Qianxi blushed to the tips of her ears. She felt that her breathing had slowed down and she was very regretful. Didn't he say that she could not have any thoughts about him? Su Qianxi, be a good girl. Pinching herself on her thigh, she immediately calmed down. What she did not know was that Li Xiqing had seen all of her little moves. His dark eyes seemed to be covered with a thin layer of mist, unreadable and unfathomable. After he finished, Su Qianxi found that the cards in front of her were very smooth. Dongfeng. Tang put down a tile and kept her eyes on Li Xiqing. According to Tang Minjing's understanding of him over the years, Li Xiqing's mind was not entirely on the gambling table. He was thinking about something. Su Qianxi. Thinking to herself, Tang Minjing found that she had no clue. Her next opponent was Mrs. Li. When Mrs. Li was about to draw, Su Qianxi's weak voice came, wait. Mrs. Li paused and looked at her. Su Qianxi pushed the cards in front of her and said, I seem to have lost. It was Tang Minjing's money that she had won. Wow, that's impressive. You are a fast learner. 3 yuan. That's a big win. Chapter 34. She reluctantly paid, but for the next few rounds Su Qianxi seemed to have a cheat code and kept eating burnt meat. Most importantly, it was all Tang Minjing's money. Let's stop playing. Su Qianxi's husband has been winning since he came. "Do you still want to give us a chance?" said one of the ladies. Another lady echoed, "That's right. Let's go find some calligraphy and painting to gossip." She dried herself. The game was soon over. She seemed to have forgotten to bring her clothes. Sorted out her cards and found that she had one more than half of the round. She reached out to grab some old clothes to cover her body. At least she did not lose too badly. After packing up, he turned around and was caught off guard without anything to cover her body. But just as she opened the bathroom door, she heard a faint sound. She had never seen such a pair of eyes. She paused and immediately became vigilant. They were as dark as ink, someone so bright that they seemed to be glowing. The sky was already dark, and the lights in the room shone on his tall and straight body, as if covering him with a layer of soft and bright holy light. Stunning. No matter how many times she looked at him, it was hard for her to look away from his face and eyes. However, at this moment she suddenly remembered the last words her mother had left her before she died. "Su Chinsi and dogs are not allowed in." Her heart trembled at this moment. Su Chinsi looked away in a hurry, turned around and said quickly, "I'll take it to Mom." As he spoke he walked away. Li Xiqing looked at her back as she ran away. There was a dim light in his eyes that could not be seen or understood. Mrs. Li never liked to have a big party on her birthday. It was just a gathering with a few friends to play cards and chat. After accompanying Mrs. Li to see off a few rich ladies, Su Chinsi felt she was about to pass out. When she returned to the room she immediately went to the bathroom. Without the cover of clothes, the mottled marks on her neck and collarbone were crazily squeezed into her mind along with the memory of last night. There seemed to be a slight pain in her lower body. Su Chinsi stood under the shower head trying to wash off the marks on her neck. However, even when she had rubbed her skin, the marks did not fade. In her previous lifetime, these marks were taken as conclusive evidence that she had drugged Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing treated her like a virus and slept in the guest room of the old house, unwilling to share a room with her. The next day they hurriedly returned to their villa and began their separate life. And it was all part of Tang Minjing's plan. She had been fooled by Su Chinsi without realizing it. She had even accepted her help, trying to please Li Xiqing and win back his heart. However, she did not know that every time Tang Minjing gave her a plan, she was stepping on Li Xiqing's bottom line. It was like a snowball. As time went by, Li Xiqing's misunderstanding of her deepened. When she knew the truth, things had already reached the point of no return. Chapter 35. Ah. There was nothing on her body. Close. She gave up. She quickly covered her chest with both hands, but then she thought of what was down there and quickly covered her lower body with one hand. She was ashamed and angry at the same time. Feeling that his eyes were getting hotter and hotter, she let out a cry and knelt down, facing him with her back facing him. "What are you hiding from?" Li Xiqing's voice was low and husky. "I've seen what I wanted to see." This made Su Chinsi even more ashamed and resentful. "You were so aggressive last night and now you're playing hard to get, huh?" She grabbed her arms, her hands almost sinking into her flesh. "I didn't." "You didn't?" Li Xiqing obviously did not believe her. That tone, that look. He was still so arrogant and inviolable. He was like a god in the sky, ruling and watching everything. However, he was only so harsh and contemptuous towards her. She suddenly looked up, her eyes red. "You peeped on me taking a shower first. Mr. Li, don't you think what you're doing is very shameless?" "Peeped?" Li Xiqing stepped in and grabbed her arm. His eyes were full of contempt. "You invited me here because you wanted me to sleep with you. Stop pretending." "I didn't." She didn't. She really didn't. But how could Li Xiqing believe her? He lifted her up and carried her in his arms. She yelped. Before she could react, she was thrown onto the only king-sized bed in the room. Lying on top of her, he curled his lips. "Do you remember what I said this morning?" "This morning? Do you know what a legal wife is?" "A legitimate tool to satisfy his lust." "A tool to satisfy his lust." Su Chinsi's heart skipped a beat. She felt wronged. Struggling with her hands and feet, she yelled, "Don't touch me, Li Xiqing. You will only make me feel disgusted if you keep pretending." His sarcastic words were like a steel knife stabbing into her heart. She could no longer hold back her tears and they flowed down her cheeks. She struggled even harder. Suddenly looking up, Su Chinsi burst into laughter, with madness, but her voice was low and horribly sarcastic. "Then don't you think it's beneath you to sleep with a disgusting woman like me?" Li Xiqing paused and narrowed his eyes. A woman like me doesn't deserve to be pregnant with the Li family's child, right? This was what he had said with his own mouth. Unexpectedly, he sneered in a low voice and pressed her legs down. His thigh was between her legs. The morning after pill lasts for 48 hours. Within these 48 hours, no matter how many times I come, I won't make you pregnant. Do you want to try? Her eyes widened. How did he know she had taken birth control pills? He moved closer until their noses were less than half a centimeter apart. Her eyelashes fluttered, and there was unspeakable shock in her eyes. Li Xiqing's eyes darkened as he whispered, "You started the fire, so you are responsible for putting it out." Su Qianxi wanted to say something, but before she opened her mouth, the words were extinguished in her mouth. His movements were wild and crazy, and he forcefully plundered without the slightest bit of pity. He was kissing her. Chapter 36. Su Qianxi shivered, feeling as if someone had poured a bucket of cold water on her. Obviously, the man on top of her was so hot that her body was almost burning, but her heart was so cold, tears ran down her cheeks and she felt that she could hardly breathe. Closing her eyes, her hands and feet were still struggling, trying to struggle. Bust. The phone on the nightstand vibrated. Li Xiqing paused, let go of her and looked at her. Su Qianxi did not know when she had burst into tears. The salty tears in her mouth made him feel a little less satisfied. His originally cold and gloomy black eyes were now covered with a layer of mist. She really did not want to. The phone was still ringing and Li Xiqing felt a little annoyed. She pulled away and left. Picking up the phone on the nightstand, she glanced at the text on the screen. Tang Menjing. What's up? Li Xiqing's voice seemed to be laced with a bit of ice, freezing her to the bone. On the other side of the phone, Tang Menjing was startled, but she was overjoyed. He had a fight with Su Qianxi at this hour? Feeling excited, Tang Menjing said sweetly, "Brother Xiqing, I'm calling to say good night." Li Xiqing's heart sank to the extreme, and even the temperature around him dropped several degrees. That's it. Cold, very cold. Tang Menjing had never felt that Li Xiqing was so cold. She gritted her teeth and said yes. On the other side of the phone, she immediately heard the sound of the phone being hung up. Holding the phone, Tang Minjing felt an inexplicable pleasure in her heart. She seemed to have done something incredible. Throwing the phone away, Li Xiqing looked back and found that Su Qianxi had wrapped herself like a dumpling, curled up at the foot of the bed, looking at him timidly like a frightened deer. There was an inexplicable feeling of vexation in his heart. She actually rejected him. However, last night, no matter what the reason was, Li Xiqing knew that he could not force her. He thought she was playing hard to get, but at this moment, he was not that stupid to do that. Giving her a deep look, Li Xiqing walked into the bathroom and slammed the door, making a loud bang. He turned on the shower and poured cold water over his head. When he came out of the cold shower, she was already asleep in her pajamas. Su Qianxi curled up in the corner with her hands in front of her chest like a baby. It was an extremely insecure sleeping posture. It was a far cry from what it was 2 days ago. However, seeing that she was sleeping so soundly, Li Xiqing felt a bit depressed. This woman. How could he have the cheek to sleep after making him look like this? After so many years in business, Li Xiqing had learned not to lose his temper easily. However, at this time, his heart felt as if he had swallowed a ton of gunpowder, and he was extremely unhappy. Lying down, he grabbed the quilt and covered himself with it. She frowned but did not wake up. This woman was just like a pig. Chapter 37. In the middle of the night, Li Xiqing was woken up by Su Qianxi's voice. She got in the car. He had always been a light sleeper. As soon as she got in the car, hearing her phone rang. He immediately opened his eyes. It was a strange number from Kingstown. Li Xiqing. Hello. Frowning, Li Xiqing turned around and looked at her. Su Qianxi curled up into a ball. He did not call her the sheets under, but Mrs. Li, sweating, her eyes were closed, but her breathing was rapid. That Lu Ainen would be bailed out as soon as she went in. I didn't drug her. She did not expect that Li Xiqing was already so influential. In the dream, curling her lips, held Li Xiqing in her arms and said, smiling proudly and yelling at him, "I will ask my lawyer to go over. I will replace you and can deal with it however you want. Su Qianxi, thank you for your hard work. Go to hell." She did not make it clear what she meant. Her coldly. However, the police were not stupid and immediately understood what she meant. Every word was like a bullet. Less than 10 minutes after she hung up, she was in so much pain. The water covered her flashed. It was Tang Minjing. In a trance, she gasped and flailed her hands like a drowning person trying to grasp at a life-saving straw. The window without saying anything. So sad. Su Qianxi looked at her and was about to wake her up. Tang Minjing asked directly. Su Qianxi grabbed his hand tightly. What do you mean? I do not understand. Joy radiated from her body. What did my cousin do to piss you off? It was like she had been saved at the moment of life and death. Tang Minjing and Lu Ainen were not dazed by her hug, but they were not bad. Su Qianxi was soaked. When she sent someone to bail Lu, her whole body was stuck. The police said she will not be released for defamation. Just when he thought she was doing it on purpose, pissed off, he heard her even breathing again. If there was no one up there, they would not dare to keep Lu Ainen in custody at the risk of offending the Tang family. However, Su Qianxi had never cared about such much stronger than when she thought it was Su Qianxi. He pushed her, but she did not move. Asked, when you drugged her again, why did you not think that you would ruin my life as well? It's not me, it's really not. When she maliciously colluded with Lu Ainen to accuse her of sleeping with her, why did she not think that her life would be ruined? He seemed to see her deliberately colluded with the cult to kidnap like a deer that had seen a hunter fleeing in a panic. She saved him in the end. Well, it's not you. However, when she was framed, why did she not think that her life would be ruined? Well in a long time. At that time, when she criticized Mrs. Chang, she sat up and saw Li Xiqing coming out of the bathroom. Why did she not think that her life would be ruined? His face was handsome and flawless. Although those things had not happened in this life yet, there were obvious green circles under his eyes. For the rest of her life. Seeing him, she felt a bit embarrassed. What she owed her sooner or later. Last night however, such a big accusation was pinned on him and walked straight out the door. What a righteous and awe-inspiring act. Su Qianxi let out a sigh of relief. If you have anything to say, come to the cafe on washing up. She dragged her small suitcase out of the door. Li Xiqing's personality was cold and unruly, Su Qianxi often disobeyed his elders. However, leaning back in the chair, she closed her eyes. Obedience towards old put it on speaker, and Yang could hear her voice clearly. He was forced to live in the old house by his grandfather. He asked, without hesitation, we have passed XX Street. But after 3 days, he couldn't wait to move back to his own house and completely separated from her. Today was the day they moved back to the villa, and his expression froze for a moment. Sure enough, he was Li Xiqing's driver, Yang. It seemed like there really wasn't any at the door. But didn't she always go there before? Miss Tang was Mr. Li's childhood sweetheart. Was it really okay to ignore her like this? Yang wanted to say something, but Su Qianxi had closed her eyes again as if she had fallen asleep. Quiet and introverted, there seemed to be a layer of fog around her, making her feel very mysterious. It seemed that this madam was a little different. Chapter 39. What happened to Lu Ainen was not a big deal, but it was not a small deal either. The video that was recorded yesterday quickly went viral after it was posted on Weibo. She could only ask Su Qianxi, the person involved, to mediate. In the past, when Su Qianxi was with her childhood friend, she would always try to please her. However, after the fight yesterday, Tang Minjing felt that Su Qianxi was not as simple as she thought. She was afraid that Su Qianxi would not come today. Sure enough, Tang Minjing waited in the coffee shop for 20 minutes and still did not see Su Qianxi. He picked up his phone and dialed again, but no one picked up. The flames of anger were instantly unstoppable. But soon she calmed down and checked her contacts. I can't deal with you, but someone else can. Su Qianxi went back to the house and asked the servant to clean up another room. She moved all her stuff to the second bedroom across from the master bedroom. It took her more than an hour to finish. She picked up her phone and saw 2 missed calls. It was from the old house of the Li family. She quickly called back and it was Mrs. Li who answered. Mom? I heard that you were going to sue Tang Minjing's cousin? Su Qianxi was dazed. How did you know? Don't sue her. Mrs. Li was very tough. The Tang family and the Li family have been friends for so many years. You can't ruin it like this. Stop it. Su Qianxi was a bit reluctant, but she had to listen to Mrs. Li. Got it. Hanging up, Su Qianxi felt reluctant. She opened Weibo and found that Lu Ainan's case had dropped on the trending list. Many of the videos and hot topics had been deleted, and the number was still decreasing. There were plenty of manipulators on the internet. It seemed that Tang Minjing had started to take action. First, she would go to Mrs. Li and then the internet. She would protect Lu Ainan from both sides. Haha, she could not let Lu Ainan go to jail. However, she had to collect some interest. Turning on the computer, Su Qianxi opened the chat tool that she had not used for a long time. She clicked on a high school friend group and quickly found a name. Louis Han. Her desk mate in middle school and high school, an enigmatic male best friend, who almost treated computers as his wife. However, after she was taken back by the Su family, they never contacted each other again. Later, he grew rapidly over the years and became the leader of the IT industry in Connecticut. She, on the other hand, had become a prostitute who was despised by tens of thousands of people. The distance between them was getting further and further apart. If she remembered correctly, this was the time when he was at his poorest. In their third year, when everyone was doing their internship, this guy had already started his own business with a few of his buddies. It was a time of shortage of funds, and now she was so poor that all she had was money. Opening the chat window, she went straight to the topic. Su Qianxi, 100,000 yuan. Help me dig up a person's dark history. As a man who almost married his computer, the other side replied very quickly. Louis Han, you have money? Su Qianxi, account number. Louis Han, picture, account information. A good friend you haven't seen for a long time suddenly wants to give you 100,000 yuan. How would you react? Louis Han pushed up the rimless glasses on his face, took a screenshot of his account, and went to get a glass of water. Ding dong.
Chapter 40. Kingstown Bank. 100,000 yuan was transferred to your account on July 10, 2016. Balance? Louis Han's brain suddenly buzzed. Louis Han was stunned, but then he screamed and quickly took a few tissues to wipe the computer, feeling distressed. Su Qianxi, did you get it? Louis Han, got it? Louis Han, did you make a fortune? Aren't you still in your junior year? Where did you get so much money? Louis Han, I heard that you married Li Xiqing. Is it true? Is the woman in the video really you? Louis Han, interesting. Whose dark history are you going to dig up? Let's see if I can dig up all 18 generations of her ancestors. Seeing Louis Han's words, Su Qianxi couldn't help chuckling. This guy really had not changed at all. Her slender fingers quickly jumped on the keyboard and the message was quickly sent. Su Qianxi, Lu Ainan. Seeing the 3 words, Louis Han shook his head and sent an okay gesture. Louis Han, I took her money and helped her out. Don't worry. I will do it. Su Qianxi, thank you. Louis Han, I also have contacts on Weibo. After you find it, you can push it on Weibo. Su Qianxi, that's what I want, like, this girl? Louis Han chuckled but quickly opened the code editor and began to prepare. When Su Qianxi closed the chat window and was about to turn off the computer, a message suddenly popped up. Wanting, Su Qianxi is online? Su Qianxi, seeing the name, Su Qianxi's heart sank. It was her Lin Wanting. She used to think of as a good friend who had sent her to the plan of Lu Ainan and Tang Menjing, became the main force behind her tragic life. After hesitating for a moment, Su Qianxi clicked on it and replied with a yes. Wanting, I didn't expect you to be here. Long time no see. Woman's good luck. Wow, Mrs. Li is online. Through the screen, Su Qianxi could feel the jealousy in the sentence. Qianqian Junzi? Mrs. Li? What kind of joke is that? Woman's good luck. She married the richest man in Kingstown. Don't you know? Didn't you see the video from yesterday? She had sent Lu Ainan to the police station. Qianqian Junzi? No way. They're classmates after all. How much hatred do they have? Wanting, don't blame Su Qianxi. I've seen the video. Indeed, and then went too far. Woman's good spirit. Lin Wanting, aren't you Lu Ainan's good friend? Why are you speaking up for her? Now that she has become Mrs. Li, you want to suck up to her, right? Chaos. In high school, these people had been at odds with her. Now their words were even sharper. She decided to ignore them. Exiting the account, she opened a document and began to type. More than an hour later, the editing was completed. Each of the 30 clauses was clear and concise. Stretching, she looked at the terms and her eyes dimmed. Even if she did not make the first move, Li Xiqing would make these rules to restrain her. Rather than passively accepting it, it was better to take the initiative. However, Li Xiqing's contract was for 5 years, while hers was for 1 year. Now, everything was ready except for the lawyer's seal.
Chapter 41. Su Qianxi did not ask Yang to follow her but took a taxi according to her memory. She went to a law firm that was half an hour away from home. Xing Shiming. He was one of the most reputable lawyers in Kingstown. In her previous lifetime, she had been framed by Tang Menjing several times and was involved in legal troubles. It was Xing Shiming who saved her from jail. This was the center of Kingstown. Tang Menjing had taken her there to go shopping. It was Xing Shiming whom he had met during lunch. Su Qianxi walked into a restaurant near the Xingshi law firm and found a seat according to her memory. At that seat, a man who looked to be in his 30s was sitting. Wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, he had a laptop and a stack of documents in front of him. The delicate dishes were not touched much. His brows were furrowed. Obviously the case he was working on was not easy. In her previous lifetime he had mistaken her for someone else. Because she looked similar to his old friend, he had tried his best to help her. Later, the day before she was framed and killed by Captain Li, he told her excitedly that he had something very important to tell her. However, she did not even have time to go. What did he want to tell her back then? Su Qianxi felt a bit regretful looking at him in a daze. Seeming to feel her gaze, Xing Shiming looked up and looked at her. With just a glance, his sharp hawk-like black eyes flashed with astonishment. A waiter came over with a tray and handed it to him. "Mr. Sheng, your coffee." Xing Shiming subconsciously wanted to take it, but he withdrew his hand because of the scorching heat. The coffee cup was knocked over and the liquid spilled all over the floor. The waiter paled. "Sir, are you okay?" Xing Shiming shook his head. Enduring the burn, he hurriedly wiped his dirty suit in embarrassment. Subconsciously, he looked in the direction of the girl. But just as he was distracted, the girl who was originally standing there had disappeared without a trace. Was it an illusion? Xing Shiming felt an indescribable regret in his heart. He withdrew his gaze sulkily, but when he turned his head, he saw a slim figure sitting in front of him. This girl had starry eyes, delicate eyebrows, delicate skin, and a small face. At first glance, she was exactly the same as that person in his memory. However, upon closer inspection, there was an obvious difference. In his memory, that person was as elegant as an orchid, beautiful and radiant. The girl in front of him seemed to be smiling, but there was a faint coldness in the depths of her eyes. It was a coldness that reached the depths of her soul. Even her facial features were more exquisite and distinct than the woman in his memory. However, even though Xing Shiming had noticed the difference, he was still stunned. Su Qianxi looked at the middle-aged man in front of her with a smile. After all, this was their first meeting. Looking at her smile, Xing Shiming couldn't help but associate her with the beautiful figure in the depths of his mind. Yes, too similar. Xing Shiming could not hide the excitement in his heart. Looking at her, his sharp and shrewd eyes were filled with light. "Hello, my name is Su Qianxi." That one sentence dampened most of the excitement in his heart. Chapter 42. Xing Shiming. Xing Shiming handed her a business card. Of course, Su Qianxi knew him, so she went straight to the point. Xing Shiming was very busy. If it was someone else who came to him, he would definitely ignore it. However, this girl looked so much like that person. After understanding her situation, Xing Shiming took on the responsibility for it. After talking about this, Xing Shiming hesitated and asked, "It may be a bit abrupt, but I think you look like a good friend of mine. What is your mother's name?" Su Qianxi had expected it, so she did not answer immediately. Xing Shiming thought she was upset and quickly waved his hand. "If it is not convenient, Su Han?" Xing Shiming was dazed. This name was completely unfamiliar to him. However, he was not satisfied and continued to ask, "Did you take your mother's last name?" "Yes, I do not have a father." Xing Shiming heard that and immediately understood. He did not want to ask further, so he checked the time and said that he was leaving. Su Qianxi followed him upstairs to the law firm. After he was done, she carefully put away the two documents. Leaving his contact information, Su Qianxi went downstairs and entered a nearby mall. After marrying into the Li family, other than a bunch of clothes that Tang Menjing had picked for her, she only had one good piece of clothing. Of course, she needed to buy some more. When she got home, it was already past 5 p.m. When she got home, she received a call. It was a strange number. "Hello." "Hi." A bright voice came from the other side of the phone. "Louis Han? Bingo Diske, I haven't seen you for 2 years and you've become smarter. Did you find it?" "Of course. Go check Weibo," Louis Han said in a nonchalant tone. Su Qianxi turned on the computer and opened Weibo. Su Qianxi found that the Lu Anan incident had been pushed to the top.
The trending topics were all about niece of the Tang family, Lu Ainan's abortion, and so on. Su Qianxi browsed through it and found that the information was far more than what she knew later. Wow. Su Qianxi was dumbfounded. Where did you find all this? That's amazing. She had an abortion in high school? Why haven't I heard of it? Nonsense, how could you know about her? In high school, what else did you know besides playing? Lu Yihan poured cold water on her. Su Qianxi laughed, feeling indescribably happy. However, I really couldn't tell that you're actually a fair, rich, and beautiful girl who has been abandoned by the common people. How is it? The feeling of a counterattack isn't bad, right? Not bad. In any case, I'm much stronger than your slut. Lu Yihan was so angry that he laughed, but he did not care too much about it. Instead, he felt very close to her. How about it? When will you treat me to a meal? My treat? I remember you owed me a barbecue in high school. Damn, you have such a good memory. How long has it been? Lu Yihan facepalmed. You want to go back on your word? She couldn't help curling her lips. Half lying on the sofa in the living room, she felt indescribably relaxed. This was the happiest moment she had ever felt in her previous life. This was the feeling of having friends. It was really good. However, she did not know that her every move had fallen into the eyes of the man upstairs. Leaning against the guardrail on the second floor, he looked down at the genuine smile on Su Qianxi's face that he had never seen before. She had never smiled like this in front of him. Chapter 43. Feeling two cold and sharp eyes falling on her head, she subconsciously looked up. Caught off guard, she bumped into a cold deep sea. Cold. So cold. Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat and saw his eyes slowly moving down. Following his gaze, Su Qianxi saw a turquoise dress with one leg on the back of the sofa and the other on the armrest. From his angle, he could see a small part of the safety pants on the thigh. Her face immediately turned red, and she sat up straight with a swoosh. Of course not. Lu Yihan did not notice Su Qianxi's reaction. He opened the fridge and took out a bottle of Coke. How about Saturday night? I'll buy you a big meal. Being stared at by Li Xiqing's aggressive eyes, Su Qianxi felt her scalp tingle. For a moment, hearing Lu Yihan's words, it was like she was chanting a spell. She answered randomly and hung up the phone. Her heart was beating so fast. Somehow Su Qianxi felt very guilty. It was like she was caught having an affair. Done talking. Li Xiqing narrowed his eyes, his voice slightly husky as if it was covered with hail. His tone was still the same, no different from usual. However, Su Qianxi felt even more guilty and quickly changed the subject. So you are back already? I thought you would work overtime. Li Xiqing arched an eyebrow and stood up straight. Putting one hand in his pocket, he asked, Do you want me to work overtime? Su Qianxi paused and did not know what to say. In her previous lifetime, Li Xiqing always worked overtime. Moreover, it would be 3 days in total. Every time she called him to urge him to go home, he would only say one word, busy. But now, why was he not busy? Su Qianxi stopped talking and whispered, How could it be? The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Nanny Rong said, Sir, madam, dinner is ready. Okay. Su Qianxi glanced at Nanny Rong gratefully, washed her hands and sat at the table. Li Xiqing walked down from the second floor at a moderate pace. Every step he took made light footsteps. The rhythm was steady and cold. He was like an ancient emperor, high and mighty. Just the sound of his footsteps brought Su Qianxi a strong sense of oppression. Of course, it was mostly because of her guilty conscience. But why did she have to feel guilty? She clearly didn't do anything, did she? Thinking of this, she felt much better. She reached out her chopsticks to pick up some food and put it in her bowl. Then she ate slowly. His movements were elegant, and there was an indescribable sense of beauty in his every movement. Compared to 2 days ago, it was like heaven and earth. However, it could be seen that it was a natural way of eating and not intentional. How could there be such a huge change in just a few days? Could it be that he had been pretending for the past 2 days? However, what good would it do to her if she pretended to be a useless idiot? Li Xiqing felt more and more confused about this woman. Gathering his thoughts, he elegantly picked up his chopsticks and reached for a piece of shrimp paste. Chapter 44. Su Qianxi looked up at him and saw he was looking at her as well. Suddenly their eyes met. When Li Xiqing's eyes came out, he saw her moving things around. Su Qianxi looked away, put down the chopsticks and said, Nanny Rong, get me another pair of chopsticks. Li Xiqing had an inexplicable obsession with cleanliness.
In
Chapter
Su
45.
Qianxi's previous lifetime,
He had a strong
she had
and
once
powerful
eaten with
upper
him,
body with
and their
well-defined
chopsticks
eight-pack
accidentally
abs.
bumped into each
His
other.
lower body was
He was
wrapped
furious
in a
on the
bath towel.
spot.
His
He said,
sexy and
"You want to
distinct
eat my
mermaid
saliva
lines
that
were
much?"
faintly discernible.
His
His healthy
Qianxi
and
was
good-looking
shocked,
wheat-colored
not knowing
skin
what she
was
had done
slowly
wrong.
dripping with water.
However, he
as
then
he
said,
approached.
"Unfortunately,
felt
I don't
the
want
gust
to
of
eat
hot
your
air
saliva.
approaching her.
It's dirty."
She suddenly felt even
Then he
hotter,
asked the maid
and her
to
mouth
change the
became dry.
chopsticks.
In order to
Subconsciously
prevent her
stepping away,
saliva
she
from
took a
dirtying
step
him,
back and coughed.
Su Qianxi had
Although we
cleverly
are
taken
married,
the
we have only
initiative.
met twice
However,
and had dinner
when
twice
Li Siqing
before.
heard her words,
So
he
we do
clenched
not
the
know each
pure
other
silver
well enough.
chopsticks in his
I
hand.
think we need some time
That
to get to know
originally
each other
cold
better.
and thin face at
Li
this moment
Siqing looked at her
looked
little
like a
movement.
nice sculpture.
His
Even
dark
the
eyes
temperature
were like
around
a
him
quiet
seemed
pool
to have
that had
dropped
not
by
been
a few
disturbed
degrees,
for thousands
and
of
it was
years.
bone-chilling.
Flashing a
Li
little,
Siqing's
he became
change made Su
again.
Qianxi even
As
more
always, he was
confused.
calm and mysterious.
What's wrong?
Seeing that he did not
Li
speak,
Siqing
Su
chuckled,
Qianxi
which
felt a
made
bit
Su
nervous
Qianxi
and
said
said
again,
just
"So,
when she thought
I
he was
think it
going
will
to
be
get
better
angry,
if we
he
sleep in
slammed the
separate rooms.
chopsticks down,
You
got
will
up,
be
and
happy
left.
this way, won't you?"
This woman thought he was dirty.
Yes. Li
Did very
Siqing said
good.
quietly.
His tall
His
figure
slightly
quickly
curly
went up
hair
to the
was still
second
dripping
floor,
water,
and the
looking
door to
cool
the master
and
bedroom
sexy.
was slammed shut.
Su Qianxi
Su
blushed.
Qianxi was puzzled
Hearing
and
his
angry.
quiet response,
This man
she
was
suddenly
really
felt
unpredictable.
relaxed.
She was
Deciding
really
to ignore
annoyed
this
that he would
man,
not
Su
agree.
Qianxi continued
After
to
all,
work hard.
there were already
Mom,
more than one or two
Nanny
things that
Rome
happened
said,
on a
frowning
different track
worriedly.
from his previous life.
Why is Mr. Li
If
angry?
this mysterious man
Su
was in a
Qianxi
bad
was annoyed
mood
and
and refused
sneered,
her, there
"He's
was nothing
sick."
she could do.
Nanny Rome was
After all, they
speechless.
were legally married.
Sighing, Nanny Rome
Fortunately,
said,
he was still
"Mr.
him.
Li does have a
No matter
stomach
how
problem.
moody he was, he
He
still
can't go
hated
hungry,
her.
right?
Ma,
Thinking
Anne,
of this,
can you
Su
ask him to
Qianxi
come
felt
down for
relaxed
dinner?
and continued to move things.
No, I'm not full yet.
After half an hour,
Su Qianxi was full of
finally
resentment.
finished and let out
In
a
her
sigh of
previous
relief.
lifetime, she
After
had been
a
bullied
comfortable
by him
bath
all her
when she
life.
came out again,
In this
it was
lifetime,
after
he
8
wanted her
p.m.
to serve him. However, there
Dream
were
on.
3 missed calls
After
on
dinner,
her phone.
she went
It was
upstairs
Nanny
and
Rome.
found that the things
Nanny
in her
Rome
bedroom
was a
had been
servant from
emptied.
the old house.
Stunned, she
She
turned
came
around
to the villa
look
to
for
take
Nanny
care
Rome.
of their daily
It
necessities.
turned out that Nanny Rome
However,
thought
she
had
had
put
her
them
own
in the
family,
wrong room,
so she
got
moved them
off work
all
at
back
7
to the
p.m.
master bedroom.
When she called
Su
back,
Qianxi wanted
Nanny
to cry.
Rome's worried voice
However,
came
she
through.
still walked to the door of the
has he
master
eaten?
bedroom and knocked.
Well, I don't know,
Mr. Li,
how can you
no
not know?
response.
However,
His stomach
it seemed
is
that
not
the
good.
arrogant Li
If he
Siqing
does
never
not eat
locked
well,
the door.
his stomach will hurt.
He was confident that no one
Madam,
would dare
you'd
to
better
barge
cook
into
something
his
for
room.
sir. She
It's
tried
not
to
good
open
if
the
he's
door, and
hungry.
sure enough, it was
Madam?
not locked.
She frowned.
When he entered the room, there was no one in it.
I really owe him.
Instead, the
With
sound
that,
of
he hung
running
up the
water
phone.
came from the
He
bathroom.
wasn't in a hurry
He
to
is
leave.
taking a bath. After
Su
drying his
Qianxi
hair,
breathed
he
a sigh
slowly
of
walked
relief
to the
and took
kitchen.
the opportunity
He
to move
opened the
things
fridge,
back.
grabbed a
After
few
going
simple
back and forth
ingredients,
several
and cooked
times,
a bowl
she
of
had only
noodles.
moved half of it.
10 minutes later,
She was
she
already
walked to the
sweating
master
and panting.
bedroom and knocked on the door. Mr. Li? No one responded. He opened the door and went in. The room was empty. Not here. She immediately thought of another place, the study. Occasionally, Li Siqing would take his unfinished work home to do. But every time he would only bring it back in order to deal with the elders. If there were no elders, he would rather work overtime in the company than come home. Thinking of how busy he was in his previous life, the possibility of him working in the study was very high. With a fluke, she took the tray to the door of the study and knocked. Mr. Li? Through the door, Su Qianxi could hear the voices inside. They must be talking on the phone. She stopped and stood at the door. When she was about to knock again, the door was opened from the inside. However, the door of the study was facing the outside. Chapter 46. Su Qianxi exclaimed and took a step back. However, the soup had already flowed down the sides of the tray. The boiling hot soup flowed down from her lower abdomen, leaving a large trail in front of her thin silk nightgown. Su Qianxi gasped in pain and took the tray a little further away from him. Li Siqing did not expect her to have such a dangerous thing in her hand. He was dazed for a second but quickly realized what was going on. He took the tray from her and looked at the mark on her body. It was summer. In order to keep cool, she was wearing a silk nightgown, which was very thin and refreshing. The water stain happened to be on her belly, clearly reflecting the curve of her mermaid line and panties. Yes, a powder blue nightgown and a powder blue panties. He glanced at it and suddenly felt uncomfortable. He asked in a hoarse voice, "Are you okay?" Su Qianxi's eyes were red. She gave him a stare and said, "Why don't you try getting burned by the freshly cooked noodles?" Li Siqing looked at the noodles on the tray that had half of the soup spilled on it. His frown relaxed a little. "You cooked it for me?" It was Nanny Rome. Su Qianxi lifted her nightgown and felt the heat on her body. She felt wronged. "Nanny Rome called me and asked me to cook noodles for you." Li Siqing heard that and his eyes darkened. His lips seemed to curl up slightly. His voice was calm and steady. "I didn't expect Nanny Rome to be so open-minded." Su Qianxi was dazed. It took her a long time to understand. Blushing, she was speechless. "You?" Inexplicably, seeing her like that, Li Siqing's bad mood suddenly lightened. Holding the tray in one hand, he grabbed her arm with the other and said, "Let's go. I'll apply the medicine for you." "Apply medicine?" Su Qianxi glanced at her lower abdomen, which was still burning, but she was wearing a dress. And a super thin silk dress. If he wanted to apply medicine, he would have to lift it up? Thinking of this, she couldn't help but think of the magnificent scene she saw that morning and blushed even more. She quickly withdrew her hand and said, "No, you go eat the noodles first. Just some soup spilled. The noodles can still be eaten. I will wash them myself." "No." Li Xiqing's voice was firm. "I did it and I will take responsibility." His black eyes were cold and filled with indescribable seriousness. For some reason, Su Qianxi was pulled away without saying anything. When she realized it, she was already sitting on the sofa in the living room. Li Xiqing put the noodles on the table and brought over a medicine box. Su Qianxi's face suddenly turned red. She quickly stood up and grabbed the medicine box, saying, I can do it myself. You go eat first. Don't be hungry. Sit down." The dignified voice seemed to come from the authority of a king, and it did not allow for the slightest disagreement. She still wanted to say something, but he suddenly reached out and held her hand. His rough and large hands were scorching hot. Li Xiqing's other hand was on her shoulder, pushing her onto the sofa. Immediately, his whole body was pressed against her. Chapter 47. Li Xiqing saw that his little wife had become obedient, and there was an imperceptible smile in his eyes. His face was still cold and calm. Looking down, Su Qianxi's lips were
really
slightly
itchy.
open,
However,
as if she was
there
a
was
little
an
scared,
inexplicable
looking at
feeling,
him, slowly
seductive.
burning from
Li
her lower
Xiqing
abdomen,
suppressed the small
making
flame
her
that
immersed
suddenly
in that
ignited
feeling.
and whispered
Li
with
Xiqing clearly
satisfaction.
noticed the
"That's
change in
right.
her.
Behave."
There was a trace of darkness
His
in his
voice
eyes.
was magnetic,
He
with
recalled the taste of
indescribable
that night
seduction,
and subconsciously
as if a
feather
feather
was
was
gently tickling her ear. Su Qianxi felt aroused and immediately had goosebumps. This man
Chapter
was really a
48.
monster. Applying
Li
medicine
Xiqing
was a kind
straightened
of
up and
torment
looked
for
at the
both
little
of them.
woman who had been
However,
forced to
during
the
the
corner
whole
of the
process,
sofa.
no one said
Looking
they wanted
down,
to end
he
it
slowly
first.
took out the ointment.
However, the atmosphere in
Lift
the
it up.
surroundings had
Su
slowly
Qianxi's
changed.
head was buzzing.
5 minutes
Blushing,
later, she
Li
suddenly
Xiqing
got
was
up and
finally
reached
done,
for the ointment
but
in
he
his
already
hand,
felt a
yelling,
little uncomfortable.
"I'll do it myself."
Licking his lips,
Li Xiqing
Li
was
Xiqing's
100%
down to her belly,
and she was powdered 165
mysterious
inverted
even if
triangle.
she
Knowing
jumped
that
over
Tang
from
was
the
closing his
sofa,
eyes,
she
was destined to be oppressed forced himself to look away and began to organize the utensils, and she did not even touch his hands. His movements had sped
Instead,
up.
she
Things
fell into
about
his
him would no
chest.
longer been exposed by hackers. That was the first thought she had when she felt that he had
now her
stopped
reputation
applying
is
the ointment. That was all
completely ruined.
She quickly pulled down her dress and got up.
Of course, Su
Rubbing her
Qianxi
sore
already
nose.
thank you.
She was almost
However,
in tears.
I'm going to
Mrs.
bed.
Lee's
Just
words
where
she
she could
pretended
see
not to know.
a
Li
cold
Xiqing's
and
indifference
indifferent
if I
lips
could do
slightly
that,
curled.
I
Su
would not have
Qianxi
been
was
paused
extremely
so
small
bad
to
there.
look
And in a
back.
moment,
The
the
video
video
of
of
Lu
Lu
Anan
Anan
in the
he
mall
slightly
was
bowed
hot
his head, his
topic.
eyes
Mrs. Lee
deep.
had
What's
always
wrong?
been
Throwing
well
herself
informed.
at me,
So
she must have
stuttering,
seen, and she couldn't
Su
tell
Qianxi
him
enough,
she
Mrs.
was quickly stepped back for a moment and said,
"Oh
"Oh
my
my
God,
God,
who
was
threw
he going
herself
to do
into
that?
his
Lu Anan's
arms?
family
They
name
were
was
legally
Xiqing's
married.
eyes
She has
felt
the
bad.
Tang
He asked,
family
how could
behind
she
her.
say no? Try
Lift
not
it
to
up.
mess
Her
with her.
period?
No, but
And
he
I'll
had
help
just
you
seen
avoid
everything.
the
Not
ointment.
happy
Don't
about it.
wash
I
it.
know what I am
Su
doing.
Qianxi blushed
However,
like a
Lu
monkey
Anan is
spot.
so
So
arrogant. When she
embarrassing.
was
I'm
thinking
not
about
the only
what to
one
say
she
to her,
has
she
offended.
answered and ran up.
His
Well,
big
no matter
hand
what,
was already
she
fast
cannot
escaping.
get involved.
Without
Slamming
saying
the
any
door
word,
now,
she
the daughter
leaned
in-law
against
against
the
the
door
family
and found
she
that her
yelped
face
and
was
tried to
burning
put
as
her
if she
hands
had
on
a
it,
fever.
but he
Understand.
forced her
Throwing
hands herself
herself
on the bed.
Tell Li
She
Xiqing
yelled
to
and
come home
complained.
more often. I'll apply the
So
ointment.
embarrassing,
Okay.
so
I'll
embarrassing.
do
After
it
hanging
myself.
up, however,
Su
did he
Qianxi
say
cone
that she
drinking
again
I'll
like
help
him?
you apply the
She
ointment.
burrowed into
Was
the
a strange
blanket.
number.
No
She was
need.
so
Recently,
embarrassed
she had
that
been
she
very
wanted to
noodles.
crawl
under it.
Is this
Her
Su
heart
Qianxi?
was beating
Li
so
Xiqing
soft
sounded
she could not
displeased.
control it. Hearing the voice,
Don't challenge
Su
my
Qianxi's
patience.
patience
Was a
was
woman
upon
who
Su
looked gentle
Qianxi's
and
heart
happened to your
tightened,
prince.
and
However,
eventually
that was
she
all.
don't
Let
have
go.
any feelings
Yes,
for
who is
Gen.
this?
Do you hear me?
It's just
Su
a plan.
Qianxi
However,
pretended
how was
not
that
to
possible?
already seen
I'm
everything
watching
I
her
need to
running
see.
away.
In high
It
school.
doesn't
Li
matter
Xiqing
if
felt
don't you
his
remember
Agnes
me?
apple tighten.
This man
and
was
his body
terrifying
tensed.
and
He
stubborn.
suddenly understood.
Once he
Why was he
decided
so
on something,
thirsty? It
what's
was
up?
really
Walking
hard
to
to
the
catch.
kitchen,
Su
he poured
Qianxi
himself a
knew his
large
temper
glass
very
of
well.
ice
Person
water.
on the
Her
other
side
side of the
looking
phone
at the
used
utensils
utensils that had
lightly.
just been
Obviously,
used.
she
He
could
could
not
not
expect
expect
such a
such
reaction.
and gently
In the
wiped
cook
over
for
his
his
Su
smooth,
Qianxi's
upright
desire
desire
for
for
friends
friends,
and
the
movement
movement
was
was
very
very
light
light.
to appear in
She
front
did
of
not
him.
feel any
What kind of
relationship
relationship
you
you
have
have
very
as long
itchy,
as you
and
made
his
her
eyes
feel
she
became
became
darker as
darker.
often as she would laugh.
She early in the morning,
nice to
he
you.
wiped it with
Had just
water
2 years
and screwed the
screwed
ointment
and
and applied it to
sure
the
enough,
clothes.
things were different
Ice
when she
cold.
was on the top.
Spread to
Among
his
them,
lower
Lin
abdomen
wanted
from
from
Tang's
as well as
bone
the
and tried
other
to
two
sound
were
nipples.
from unknown numbers.
She said,
Su Qianxi
narrowing
narrowing
them
them
told
told
Lu
Ling
Anan
to come to the
the
reunion,
Lu But I do not
incident
know what to
had
wear.
become a hot
Shall we
topic
go
on Weibo
shopping?
overnight.
Let's meet up.
Curling her lips,
We haven't seen
Su
each other in a
Chenxi
long
seemed to
time.
be able to foresee how
In her
chaotic
previous
the Tang and
lifetime,
Liu families
Su
were right
Chenxi
now.
was confused
The
by
phone
Lin
suddenly
Wanting's
vibrated
friend,
again
and went
a
out with her
melodious
without
ringtone
hesitation.
sounded.
Su
It was
Chenxi
Mrs.
gave
Li,
her a dress
Mom.
from a luxury
Where are
brand,
you?
but she was
Mrs.
given
Li's
an
voice
old-fashioned
sounded a little
dark-colored
angry.
evening dress.
It was obvious that something had
Lin
happened.
Wanting was like a
the
weird
villa.
Snow White, and
What's
Su
wrong?
Chenxi with her clothes was the natural poison queen. Lin Wanting said, "Look, does my dress look good?" Su Qianxi gave it to me. It costs more than 100,000. Lu Anan had already been in cahoots with her, telling everyone that Su Qianxi was a sugar baby. After all, who would have thought that a person who had nothing before would suddenly marry the national Prince Charming of Kingstown? Su Qianxi found it hard to defend herself. In addition, her temper was too impetuous at the time. In the case of extreme anger, she smashed things randomly and was pointed at by everyone. However, he did not know that Lu Anan and Tang Menjing had already predicted that he would end up like this. Chapter 50. Did she hate him? Of course she did. However, if she could do it all over again, she would not be tricked by these people again. Su Qianxi? Lin Wanting could not help calling out when she did not get an answer. Sure. When? Hearing Su Qianxi's answer, Lin Wanting was overjoyed and asked, "Let's do it today, shall we?" "Great. Let's go to Imperial Star Mall. There are more things there." "Great." Lin Wanting's eyes lit up. Imperial Star Mall was a famous luxury mall in Kingstown. Even buying a loaf of bread there would be a lot of pride. Hearing Su Qianxi's words, Lin Wanting was more than happy. Anyway, with Su Qianxi's personality, as long as Lin Wanting acted pitiful, Su Qianxi would definitely give her what she wanted, right? Lin Wanting hung up the phone happily and put on makeup before going out. When she arrived at Imperial Star Mall, it was already more than 10 minutes later. Lin Wanting stood under the trees for about 10 minutes, sweating and feeling uncomfortable. However, Su Qianxi did not call her. Lin Wanting was a bit annoyed and called Su Qianxi. "Why are you not here yet?" Su Qianxi seemed very surprised. "No. I thought it was afternoon. I haven't gone out yet." "No way. Don't you always go out as soon as you have a date?" Lin Wanting felt that she had been tricked and was a bit angry. Su Qianxi responded slowly and said, "I have been suffering from procrastination recently. Sorry. Go find a place to sit. I will be there in 20 minutes. He impatiently walked into a coffee shop, ordered a cup of the most expensive fruit juice and sat down to wait. Anyway, Su Qianxi, that idiot, would definitely pay for it. 20 minutes later, Su Qianxi called as expected. Feeling relieved, Lu Anan picked up the phone. "Hey, I am in the coffee shop. Come on in." "Coffee shop? It is too far. I will not go there. You can come directly into the mall." When Lin Wanting heard this, she was a bit anxious. "But don't you want to have a drink first before going shopping?" "No need. Why do you want a drink? Come here quickly. I'm at the XX counter in the mall." Lin Wanting gritted her teeth and hung up the phone, paying the bill herself. The most expensive glass of juice here was equivalent to 2 or 3 days of her expenses. Su Qianxi, that be asterisk tsh, did not even come, making her spend so much money for nothing. "Forget it, I'll definitely rip her off later." When they walked in, Lin Wanting almost recognized Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi used to be beautiful and the most popular girl in high school. However, her entire temperament was that of a hooligan girl with a bit of a mischievous air. And now, Su Qianxi looked at the skincare products on the counter and smiled at the salesperson's promotion. Lin Wanting could not help but be attracted to her when she saw her from the side. The person in front of him had a transcendent temperament. She was elegant and refined. She was dressed nobly but not old-fashioned. She was full of vigor but elegant. Especially the things that she was wearing, any one of them was worth several months of her living expenses, or even more. Originally, she did not believe it when they said that Su Qianxi married the Prince Charming of Kingstown, but now it seemed that it was almost true. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.